Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty, alongside Eddie Cox, in the house, in the building. Grade A Media, Grade A Radio, Facebook Live, YouTube, all that. Eddie, what is up? Hey, man, we have the MLB Playoffs starting tonight with the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. Of course, the Houston Astros kicking off this upcoming Thursday against the Chicago White Sox. You know, we've been clamoring for the playoffs for a while now. It's finally here. Of course, the NFL is in full swing right now. It's been a lot of developments. The rookie quarterbacks, they're playing better. Like I've always said, you have to let those guys play, let them evolve, and things will take care of themselves. Now, of course, some guys had some success last week. That doesn't mean that they're just going to roll through the NFL, but the fact that they're getting used to the NFL speed and the game plans are more suited for them now. Coaches are making wiser decisions. We can talk about that. Of course, we have a guy in there, Eddie, our boy T. Berry, who's from Miami, Florida. He's in there. He's a big-time Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. He asked if we were going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what did you tell him?
I said, you betcha.
You bet. Tom Brady going back to Foxborough. Eddie, and you said last week you didn't know how the fans of Boston were going to react, and they gave him a warm welcome, but it wasn't the warm welcome that I expected. They still, when he came out into the field, you still heard some boos, but he still had a warm welcome for the most part. So it was mixed in that regard. But we could talk about that game for a second, of course, and talk about some of the other games that happened this past weekend. Of course, the Texans. Hey, like I've always learned, like I've learned when I was younger, if you don't have anything good to say about someone, don't say it at all.
Hey, but you know, we don't shy away from these type of things. You and I, we'll face whatever's going on with the teams we root for head on. I mean, that's part of the job. That's what we do. We got to call these guys out, whoever needs to be called out.
That was my next statement.
We got to call them out, because we're the only ones who are going to do it,
Right.
But your Cowboys look really good, so I know we're definitely going to talk about them. But the Cowboys starting to surprise some people. That defense starting to look like it's not a fluke.
I know. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that.
We could dig into Trayvon Diggs a little bit.
Absolutely. Who should be right now, if you had to give the defensive player of the year right now.
DPOY? You go DPOY week 4.
He would have it after week 4. I mean, the guy is balling out of his mind right now.
Man,
it's getting to the point, and we're going to talk about that game here pretty soon. And, of course, we could talk about some upcoming games as well when we talk about the NFL, but we're going to rehash some of the games that was this past weekend. Now, of course, we're not in here on a Sunday evening or a Monday morning or Monday evening, Tuesday evening, so we can't totally ignore the games from this past Sunday, but we still want to look ahead as well to a few games. But again, the MLB Playoffs start tonight. We have the New York Yankees against the Boston Red Sox. The last time, Eddie Cox, that you had a New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox winner-take-all game in the playoffs, 1978. You were not even thought of at that time. 1978. Bucky Dent, 3-run homer, bottom of the 7th or top of the 7th, but the 7th inning. I know it was the 7th inning, and the Yankees ultimately won that game 3-2, ultimately won the World Series. So we'll see what happens tonight. You have Garrett Cole on the mound, the $324 million man. Obviously, New York Yankees fans would love for him to earn that money tonight, of course. That game is getting ready to tip off. The first pitch I think is at probably 7 o'clock or somewhere around there. But don't worry about that first pitch. Listen to the sports court right now. Of course, you have the St. Louis Cardinals and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers won 106 games, Eddie, and they find themselves in a playoff scenario, wild card game, one-game playoff, do or die. It's almost like March Madness, except it's baseball. So, of course, that's going down tomorrow night. And, of course, the rest of the MLB playoffs. But the team that we're most excited about and most waiting to see is the Houston Astros. Kick it off against the Chicago White Sox this upcoming Thursday. But before we get to the Houston Astros, and, of course, we're going to talk a lot of NFL, like I said, may sprinkle toward the end, may sprinkle some NBA in there. Of course, I'm all excited about the NBA. I know you are too, Eddie. But, of course, the NBA season, it's still in the beginning stages right now. It's preseason. So we're doing this one time a week right now. So we're not going to put too much energy into pro basketball right now. But there are a few things we may want to discuss toward the end of the show because during basketball season, we're going to talk a lot of NBA. So first off, Eddie, what do you think about tonight's matchup between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees?
This is going to be a good one. And, I'm really excited to see Garrett Cole go in this game. I mean, we know what he did for the Astros when he was here. We know how that all ended, and then they paid a boatload of money to get him over there in pinstripes. This is what you paid him for.
Yeah.
If Garrett Cole doesn't pitch his best game of the season, then you got to be kind of pissed off if you're up in that front office because you're wondering why the hell did we spend all this money. But, this is something the Yankees deal with year in and year out. They spend a lot of money. They don't always win, to wherever their talent says they should win to.
Right.
They don't always win as many. They should be a 100-plus win game or 100-plus win team every year on paper. But they run into all these different
injuries,
bumps in the road, injuries, hitting issues. They're the team with the best sticks in the league. Now, they didn't hit the best.
Up and down the lineup.
If you go and look at what the Astros did, to compare them to the hometown team, you go and look at any batting statistic top to bottom, you've got 3, 4, 5 Astros right there in the top 10. Between Gurriel, who took the entire batting title, down the line to Tucker, Altuve. You keep going. Altuve may be down on average, but he's hitting a lot more home runs this year. But, the Yankees have had their own issues with that, with strikeouts and stuff like that. But here it is, one game, one win, and you're in. And because they have Garrett Cole, everybody expects them to do it, as do I. If they don't win, it's a huge disappointment for the Yankees, but I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to shed a tear or anything. I'm going to be laughing all the way to the bank. Because
you know what?
I don't care for the Yankees. I don't care for what they stand for. I don't care for their crybaby attitude. They should be good based on how much money they spend, but they're not. So I don't have nothing for them. Unfortunately, the Red Sox are a little short-handed coming into this game. So could they win? Absolutely. I just don't see it. I think Garrett Cole pitches a gem, and the Yankees find enough offense to win the ballgame.
Hey, you know what? I do too. And the fact that J.D. Martinez, Boston's probably their best hitter.
There you go.
Consistently, J.D. Martinez is not playing tonight because of an ankle injury, a fluke ankle injury that he got, I think, the last game they played. Doing something that he usually does. It's like a ritual where he goes and steps on second base or something like that.
Right.
But so he's out of the lineup. And, of course, Garrett Cole, his last 5 starts, he's had a 6.15 ERA. Now, his last start against the Baltimore Orioles was a gem. So you want to make – of course, it was the Baltimore Orioles, a team that finished like 50 games out of first place or something like that.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, again, $324 million pitcher, a guy that's done it in big moments before. So all you need is one gem from him right now. Of course, obviously, it's going to come down to execution. He's going to find the pitches. He's going to need to execute his pitches. He's going to have to stay away from Devers. And, of course, Garrett Cole, $324 million, you say, why would he stay away from a guy? He's supposed to go right at the guy. But you're still going to have to pitch smart, and you're still going to have to know who you're facing in the lineup. Rafael Davis is a guy that's been very hot. He's the guy that ultimately propelled the Boston Red Sox into this playoff position right here, taking the Toronto Blue Jays, who I would have loved to have seen in the playoffs with that young talent. Of course, they're a young team, and they have a lot of bats with George Springer and Guerrero Jr., who's in the MVP running with Shohei Ohtani. And, of course, you can go on and on, Simeon. And so, of course, the Toronto Blue Jays, they're a team to be reckoned with in the future. I would have loved to have seen them in this playoff scenario. But you have this powerhouse traditional matchup.
I don't think it can get any better. I'd like to see some of those other teams, but it doesn't get any better than watching the Yankees and the Red Sox, whip up on each other.
Yeah, and so what Garrett Cole is going to have to do, he's going to have to be the guy that you're talking about, the guy that they paid all this money to. He's going to have to locate his pitches, find the strike zone, but he's going to have to be aggressive, but at the same time be smart. And, again, you don't have J.D. Martinez, so there's no excuses for the Yankees. The second half of the season, the Yankees hit their groove. You have Stanton, who's playing at a high level right now, Giancarlo Stanton, and then, of course, Aaron Judge. Both of those guys in the second half of the season, after the All-Star break, they've been playing like the guys that the Yankees thought they would be coming into the season. So they're the big sticks in the lineup right now. And, of course, that's a 2-run homer with each of these guys. It's a 2-run homer or a 3-run shot ready to happen at any given time. So you have that going for the Yankees as well. So it's going to be interesting.
That's the most important thing, Greg. When we really look at the matchup, ideally they'd like to get a big lead early and then just be able to go to the bullpen. You don't want to have if you trust me.
To your point, I'm glad you said that.
It's a win-all scenario. I mean, winner take all.
59-22 when they get out to an early lead against their opponents.
That's a great point.
And 32-48 otherwise.
And not just because of that, but because you're going to go into a 5-game series against a Tampa Bay team. That's the number 1 team in the American League, and you'd like to have Garrett Cole fresh and ready to go as soon as you could get him in the game, whether it's game 1 or game 2. As soon as you get him in that series, you want him ready to go. And if he's got to pitch 7 or 8 innings tonight, that doesn't bode well for him being ready to go early in that series. And you don't want your ace already to be on, limited stamina every time he comes in starting. We've seen that happen to pitchers before throughout the playoffs, and that's how they could get rocked. I believe, when Clayton Kershaw didn't have his best playoff performances, I think having to do that had a lot to do with it. Pitching so long and so late in the games. They want to get Garrett Cole in there. They want to jump out to an early lead. They'd like to get him out in the 4th inning, if they could. 4 2/3 at the most. They want to get him out of there, go to the bullpen with a comfortable lead, and then see what happens. And then if they come back, if the Red Sox come back and make it a game, well, good thing the Yankees don't have a weak bullpen. They definitely got some strong arms at the back end that can compete. I think you'd have them right where you want them. So that we'll see how that game unfolds. But ideally, the Yankees don't want to have Garrett Cole go 7, 8, 9 innings and try to throw a complete game. Right. But they will let him do it if that's what it takes.
That's where I was going. Hey, this is a 1-game playoff scenario, and I think they'll do anything to get to that next stop, which they'll have a 5-game series, of course. Or will it be a 7-game series? No, it'll be a 5-game series.
No, the very next one is 5. ALDS is a 5-game series. And then after that, the championship series and the World Series, of course, goes 7.
7 games. But, of course, they will do anything possible to get to that 5-game series. So if that means him pitching a complete game, that's what will have to happen. Ideally, they would love to do exactly what you're talking about, where he wouldn't have to go that deep, where they can use him in that first game, or at least maybe that second game, but they're going to pull out all the stops tonight. Of course, they're going against Uvalde, who pitched for the Astros at one point, didn't he, if I'm not mistaken? And from Alvin, Texas. And, of course, he's pitched against the Astros as well in some key moments, World Series when he was with the Red Sox. And so there's a guy right there, and he's underrated. And now he hasn't been the guy that maybe from 2015, but he still has a 96 to 99 mile per hour fastball, 99 miles per hour fastball that he can throw at you. He can throw the curveball. He can throw the splitter. He can throw the cutter. So the Yankees have to be ready to go against a very experienced. Now, he's the guy that's had Tommy John surgery twice. He had it once in high school, and he also had it when he was pitching for the Boston Red Sox, if I'm not mistaken. So here's a guy that's battled through injuries, but he's playoff tested. He's experienced. Yeah. And so the moment is not going to be too big for him. So, and again, there's a guy that has a quartet of pitches that he can throw to keep the Yankees off balance. So the Yankees have to bring their best tonight, and they have to be ready. So we'll see what happens with that. And, of course, you have the Cardinals and the Dodgers tomorrow, like I spoke of. And stay tuned. We're going to talk a lot of NFL, of course, the rookie quarterbacks and their success this past weekend and how they bowl moving forward. I want to get Eddie's take on Ben Roethlisberger. You have Josh Gordon now in the fold with Kansas City. Kansas City was able to get back in the mix. You have the Chargers winning last night against the Raiders. I want to get your take on that. Of course, the Cowboys and the Texans. We're going to talk about that. Lamar Jackson throwing for over 300 yards. But first things first, the Cardinals and the Dodgers tomorrow night. That Wednesday matchup, that's going to be very interesting as well because the Dodgers are putting out all the stops tomorrow with not with Clayton Kershaw, with Max Scherzer. Now, we all know Max Scherzer, Mad Max. He's already mad right now, like Trey Turner said. He's mad right now. So you know he's going to come in full of energy. And the Cardinals have been the hottest team in baseball. We talked about their momentum going into the playoffs and how that usually bodes well and how that usually bodes well for a team, and sometimes that momentum can lead them to a World Series. They're playing against a juggernaut in the Los Angeles Dodgers who find themselves in this position in a one-game playoff position wild card after winning 106 games. The only reason they're in this position because they're in a division where the San Francisco Giants had the best record in baseball. They won 107 games. So now you have a winner-take-all one-game scenario, and the stakes are high. Again, it's like March Madness, except it's baseball. Does Mad Max get the job done tomorrow?
Most likely, but they better be glad that they've got him, because if we were talking about Kershaw or the much maligned and now ostracized Trevor Bauer, then, I'd be going with the Cardinals. And it's not like they've been on this long winning streak. They had a long winning streak, up until the last week or so of the season. They dropped their last 2 games to the Cubs and a game before that to the Brewers. So it's not like they're coming in like wondering when the streak's going to pop, which I think could probably been the worst case scenario for them. It's like you bring up March Madness all the time. You worry about that undefeated Gonzaga team, or, if they're going to finally wonder when that cherry's going to pop, when you're going to get that first loss of the season.
Are they going to miss shots?
And it just adds to the extra pressure. It starts mounting whenever things go wrong. But I don't think that this Cardinal team has to worry about that. And really what it comes down to, you talk about Eovaldi, he's a battle-tested guy. And he had shown to pitch some of his best baseball in the playoffs of all places. It doesn't surprise me one bit. They're electing to go with yes. Right. Oh, am I getting? I'm already. You're good. I'm already off.
I jumped to the Cardinals.
Who's starting for the Cardinals?
The Cardinals, Wainwright, Adam Wainwright.
Oh well, then and so they got their longtime stud going for them.
Absolutely.
So, man, this is going to be one hell of a pitcher's duel.
It is.
I could easily see this being a 3-2 ball game, something of that nature. But it's hard to pick against the Dodgers. But man, if I had to say who I'm rooting for, I got to be rooting for the Cardinals, and I definitely think they've got what it takes to get it done.
Well, you know what? The Dodgers have a guy in Albert Pujols that's going to make the Hall of Fame pretty much based on what he did for the St. Louis Cardinals. Not pretty much based on, but what he did for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Nice little underlying storyline.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure he's going to be – now, what the Dodgers need, they need for Cody Bellinger to step up and be the Cody Bellinger, the guy that everyone thought he was going to be after he won the MVP. He had a down season this year. I mean, he obviously dealt with some injuries, but he just hasn't been that same guy, that guy that you can count on. Now, in a one-game wild card playoff, he can get a hold of one. He has a violent swing, so he can get a hold to a pitch from Adam Wainwright and send the Dodgers to the next series. Now they definitely need him to play big. Albert Pujols, of course, you can bring Albert Pujols in as whether it's pinch hit or whatever, as a pinch hitter or whatever. And he can deliver with a 2-out single or a 2-out home run. He can still deliver even at his age of 40-something plus years old. He can still deliver and bop one out of the ballpark. So the Dodgers have everything working for them in that regard, and the fact that they have Max Scherzer on the mound. Now, one thing I will say about Max Scherzer, watching him with the Nationals, as great as Max Scherzer is, as dominant as he is, Max Scherzer is the type of pitcher, he can pitch a gem. He could pitch a 3-hitter, but 2 of those hits are sometimes solo shots.
You see that a lot with some of the best pitchers in the game. I mean, we saw that a lot with Justin Verlander. When pitchers are on, they don't miss very much, and really good hitters are looking for that one pitch where they'll miss. And whenever a hitter's got you pegged, or he's got you pinned, he knows what you're going to throw. They do catch barrels. That's what happens. That's what the sport's about. And so you'll see some of the best pitchers. They may throw a 1 or 2 hitter, and like you said, those are just home runs or really big hits. But that's typical. That's typical playoff baseball.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to get that every year. I mean, we saw it happen to Clayton Kershaw. When we watched in 2017, when the Astros jumped all over him, and he had been pitching pretty well. It happened.
You're right.
But it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. And don't forget, the Cardinals have their own set of heavy sticks over there as well. That they can definitely challenge the Dodgers when it comes to putting up runs and stringing together big innings, which is something during that winning streak they did a lot. Put up a lot of crooked numbers in middle innings of big games, and so.
Well, that's the thing. If they can, because Max Scherzer is going to challenge them. Now, that's one thing. Max Scherzer is definitely going to try to throw that fastball by them. And if they sit on that fastball enough, not the fact that he can't throw other pitches, that he doesn't have other pitches in his arsenal, but Mad Max is going to come at those guys. So All they have to do is catch him a couple of times. So you want to get Max Scherzer out the game as quick as possible, and you want to get into that bullpen.
No kidding.
Right. That almost goes without saying. But I'm telling you, like you said about those bats in the lineup that they have as well, and you still have Molina, and so they have some
Arredondo,
guys.
Goldschmidt.
Arenado, who came from Colorado,
yeah.
obviously. Who came from Colorado, and he's been all that they asked for, and then some. So he's proven that he's worth every penny that they paid him. And so they have a very, very well put together team who just, the St. Louis Cardinals, a well-ran organization, and they just know how to get the job done and win. They just have that tradition of winning. So they have guys up and down that lineup, like you said, that can just get the job done, and they play as a team. So obviously you saw what they did to finish out the season. So it's going to be, that's going to be an interesting one-game wild card playoff. But I would have to, if I had to pick a team right there, I would have to pick the Dodgers in that game because of Max Scherzer. And I think he just mows a lot of those guys down again. But if they can get to him early with a home run or two, kind of shake his confidence, which I don't think you can shake his confidence. He's going to keep coming at you. But when he starts wiping that sweat, and so like you said, a low-scoring game, it's playoff baseball. It probably will be a low-scoring game. And that probably bodes well for the St. Louis Cardinals if that's the case. So we shall see. But the Dodgers, again, the Dodgers are going to have to get something from Cody Bellinger. I think it would behoove them to really get in his ear and really let them know how much they really need him to return back to form, at least this one game, and get them to that next level to where they can at least compete in the next series. So it's going to be interesting. But the series...
And, hey, it's an uphill battle for him when it comes to postseason performance.
It is.
He hasn't played his best baseball in the postseason his entire career. Mm-hmm. And if I'm being completely honest, I do not expect that to start this season. And it could just be that he may be one of those guys that for whatever reason between the ears, when it's playoff baseball and the pressure's on, you just don't have it at the plate. Yeah. I mean, we know how difficult it is to hit some of these guys. You're getting the best pitchers. They have the best data. They have season-long data. And, we're not talking about early on in the season, early summer, early spring. No, we're talking about they've got the whole season of data on you. So these pitchers are going to come in with a really good game plan. And so far, throughout the course of his career, Bellinger has not been up to par when it comes to matching that level of preparation for the at-bats he's going to have.
I think his swing.
Well, when you got that lefty looping, like, launch angle swing.
Right, launch angle.
You got to be perfect.
Everything is a home run or nothing, and that's how he swings the bat, and that just hasn't bowled well. It hasn't bowled well for him in the last couple of years since he's won the MVP. Now, of course, he's had injuries this past season, so we'll see if he can regain that form. But like you're saying, it's going to be tough to do against the St. Louis Cardinals in that one-game playoff scenario. But the Dodgers definitely would like to see him return to form at least for one game, at least one big at-bat. Maybe he can get that launch angle, get one out of the ballpark with a man or two on base, and that can propel the Dodgers to the next series. We shall see. But the series, before we talk a lot of NFL, stay tuned. But the series we're definitely looking forward to, Eddie. I know you are, and you know I am as well. The Houston Astros against the Chicago White Sox. Pretty much an evenly contested matchup on paper. But where I give the Astros the edge is with that playoff experience.
Yeah, and this is the Astros team right now. Like I really feel like they've got something to prove. I know they came into the playoffs sort of struggling there at the end. Things got a lot closer than we thought they were going to get in the division, even though it's still they won that pretty comfortably. And then when you talk about the ALDS having home field, there was a coming out of the All-Star break, I should say. After the All-Star break, we thought there was a really good chance, the Astros were going to be the number one seed. Had they played as well as they could play, they probably would be the number one seed. Then they struggled mightily there in the last quarter of the season with weaker, inferior opponents. And then they had three really tough series, 2 with the A's, 1 with the Rays. And I thought they played each one of those series almost like playoff baseball. They really prepared themselves and did what they had to do, against teams that were playing them tough. Now, I know the A's were already out of it in the last series, but trust me, they wanted to do everything they could to spoil the Astros party. And up until last night, or the night before, they still had an opportunity to make sure that the Astros were not going to get any type of home field advantage. But, the Astros
handled their business.
They did what they do. When they catch fire, they go, and it carries over.
Was that the 7-6 victory?
Yeah, it carries over from one. It carries over from one game to another. The game where they clinched the ALDS, I think they won 10-3. They had, or 10-4. They had a really good game. They jumped out to an early lead, and they were sort of able to coast the rest of the game. And then, of course, they got challenged a little bit in the next game. But you look at this Astros team, and that series with the Rays prior to the last series with the A's, that showed me a lot too, because they were just coming off of getting swept by the A's, and there's a good chance that you could have a Rays team come in here and sweep the Astros again, and then you're on the brink of being a wild card team, which is exactly where we know they don't want to be. But they buckled down. They took the first game against the Rays in a very close, I think it was a 3-2 ball game. They ended up losing the next game, and then in the rubber game, they were able to bring it home. And that was, to me, that was a huge win, propelling you into your final series against Oakland. And we're talking about the best team in the American League.
Right.
So, that goes to show me right there that still, at its core, this team knows how to play its best baseball when it matters most and against the toughest opponents. And right now, they've got a White Sox team that everybody seems to be jumping on the bandwagon with. They played really well. This is a very good team. The pitching over there is very good.
Yeah, the pitching is very good.
But don't forget the Astros, they still won the season series. What was it, 5-2?
Yes.
So
I think it was 5-2.
I think it was 5-2. One 4-game series, one 3-game series. And so that gives me confidence going into this series that, if the Astros pitch well and the bats are there, they're not gonna have a problem beating these White Sox right out of the building, especially out of Minute Maid Park.
Well, you have Lance McCullers going in that first game, and it bodes well that he's playing at home. You get a lot of ground balls.
He pitches well at home.
And he pitches well at home.
Valdez
and the Astros have a great
him.
defense. Right.
Yeah.
The White Sox are not noted for their defense. And again, the Astros bring this experience, especially at the plate. They bring this experience. Now, of course, there's a lot of questions still about the Astros bullpen, but they're so deep in their lineup from top to bottom on the offensive side. Granted, in the playoffs, you want your pitching to be stellar. That goes without saying. So you would like Lance McCullers to go deep into the ball game to where you do not have to get into that bullpen, at least the middle part of that bullpen. You do not want to have to do that. So you want McCullers to go deep into that first ball game as long as possible to keep some of that pressure off those bullpen guys. Lance McCullers is a guy that's been there already as well. You really don't know what you're going to get from Greinke out of the bullpen. You don't necessarily want to have to use him in the bullpen like that unless you just really have to, and you probably want to use him in a situation to where if the starting pitcher gets into some trouble, then you bring him in there and you let him eat up some innings early on or something like that, because he's a guy that's battle tested and he's an experienced pitcher who knows good ball placement and where to actually pitch certain hitters and things like that. He has that experience as a pitcher. So you definitely want to lean on Zach Greinke's experience. So if the bullpen and the pitching staff can help out Dusty Baker and that offensive side of the ball, I mean, hey. And, of course, Dusty has to manage those guys well. He has to know who to go with, when to pull certain pitchers, how long to keep. I mean, so he has to be on top of all of that. But I just think the Astros with Carlos Correa, Altuve, Bregman coming back, now he's getting healthy. I think they're getting healthy. Both of these teams are getting healthy at the right time, because when they played in the regular season, of course, the White Sox, I don't think they had Luis Robert at the time. He wasn't playing. Of course, Bregman wasn't playing. So now you have these guys back in the fold. And again, you have an Astros team, Michael Brantley. I can go on and on. And the whole time we've talked about the Astros this year, every time you've asked me about them, I've always said, once they get to the playoffs, I think with that potent attack they have on the offensive side of the ball, that bodes well. And everything is going to hinge on the fact, what can the pitching staff do to help them out? So we will see moving forward. But the bullpen, the second half, the latter part of the season, the bullpen wasn't as good as they were early on. So there are a lot of questions about the bullpen right now. But again, I just think the Astros have the edge. Of course, they have the home field advantage, and they're playing that first game at home, the first couple of games at home. And I just think playing at home with that experience, I mean, they've been to the playoffs the last 5 years. I think they've been to the American League Championship Series. So I think that's going to bode well. Now, the White Sox as a team, they're a young team, an up-and-coming team, and they don't have the experience of the Astros in that regard. But you do have an experienced manager in Tony La Russa, who's been there, has a couple of World Series rings to his credit. So there's a guy who knows what it takes. He knows the right buttons to push in certain situations. So he's not going to be, the stage is not going to be too big for Tony La Russa. No. So Dusty Baker, and kudos to Dusty Baker, the first manager to ever lead 5 different teams to division championships. So kudos to him, and let's see if he can get that World Series ring,
the ever elusive one,
that
and then
ever elusive World Series ring,
and then go ahead and hang them up, hang the nitrile gloves and mask up, and call it a career. I could easily see that happening if that's what goes down. Look, a lot's been made about the Astros bullpen and how they've been inept at times. But there was a short stretch of the season where they pitched really, really well, and then even after they made the moves that they went to go and get the likes of Yimi Garcia, Kendall Graveman, Maton, these guys, they were pitching well. And to me, where the Astros really struggled the most is whenever the starting pitching gets knocked out really early. We're talking about 5 innings or less. It's almost like if you get to that 5th inning, you kind of feel good. But it's the middle innings that have really hurt the Astros, or where they've been the most vulnerable to taking damage from other teams when their starters don't go deep enough into games.
Right.
I know you're not going to have Greinke as a starter anymore, but I think having him sort of in that rover bullpen position where, he's walking around all the time because he can't sit still. And if somebody goes out there and they're just not doing well, you're not afraid to go to him in the 2nd or 3rd inning, and he can give you, 4 or 5 solid innings, get you deep into the ball game, so you can go to a guy like Graveman, you can go to the speed or the fastball of Stanek. But that's, to me, when you talk about the Astros bullpen, it's been those middle innings, and I think having Greinke there is actually going to soften that a little bit, especially if he gets to where he's feeling good and feeling better and comfortable in that position. I mean, let's face it, this is a guy that's done pretty much everything you can do.
He's definitely willing to be in that position.
Well, I mean, from what was reported, it was his idea.
Absolutely.
He's the one who suggested it to Dusty Baker to begin with. And when you talk about a guy like Zach Greinke, a guy who's done, like I said, pretty much everything a baseball player could do. He's hit home runs. He's pitched, in both the National and American League. He's pitched in big ball games. This is an opportunity for him to contribute to this team in a way he's never done before. And I think he's chomping at the bit to do that, especially since he knows actually that is a weakness of the team. He can turn it into a strength if he performs really well. But obviously, if you're not getting your best stuff from Lance McCullers, if you're getting shaky stuff from Valdez, it's going to be hard to win. But I've got a lot of confidence in guys like Jose Urquidy and Garcia. He's been a little shaky lately, but he's one of those guys.
He's pitching in the second game, isn't he, Garcia? I think he is.
No, Valdez. Valdez is going to go number 2.
Okay.
But Garcia is one of those guys, if he gets out there, he's a little wild, don't have his best stuff, you go to Greinke. You go straight to Greinke.
Right.
And just, he's got his back. And then if Greinke goes in there and gets you out of a jam and settles you down, you feel like you get yourself to a comfortable spot where you can go with one of your middle relievers, then you do so and you save Greinke for another emergency situation so that you can bring him in. And you don't have to worry about bringing in one of your middle relievers maybe who gets rocked a little bit more than a guy like Greinke would. And then now it's the 3rd inning and you're down, 5-0, 6-0 because your starter got rocked. And then the guy you brought in after him got rocked. And so now you're just behind the 8 ball and you're maybe even considering throwing in the towel in this one and playing for the next game. Greinke being a part of the bullpen now helps you not have to deal with that or not have to worry about that as much. It's going to help Dusty Baker out a lot.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
And real quick, Odorizzi in the game against the Athletics, the one that clinched the playoffs or clinched the ALDS home field for the Astros, he pitched really good.
Right.
So there's nothing that I like more or nothing I like to see more than a starting pitcher who maybe has been up and down throughout the year pitch one of his best games, the start right before we go into the playoffs. So now he's up. He's going in there with confidence. That confidence is a big deal for pitchers. I know you may think about, this isn't Little League. These guys are getting paid. Trust me, confidence is a huge deal, especially when you're talking about pitching. And I like the confidence that Jake Odorizzi is going to carry over into the postseason, coming off that big win against Oakland.
I've always liked his talent. I've always seen the upside in Odorizzi. and it's really time to see it come to fruition. And I would love to see him succeed as well. But I like Odorizzi, and I like the Astros pitching staff as a whole, and I really want to see them gel in these playoffs and help out those bats. Now, of course, I say all that about the offense. I mean, I remember back when Bagwell and Biggio and those guys were playing, they would be mashing on everyone throughout the regular season, and then they would get into the playoffs, and they would face someone like Greg Maddux and John Smoltz, and they would get blanked.
Yeah.
So, of course, but the Astros over the past 5 seasons, and I'm not talking about the cheating scandal. I don't think they had to do that, but they did it. It is what it is with that. I think those guys are very talented regardless. We saw what they did last season, almost making it to the World Series. I think they have that talent to do the same thing again this season. And so I'm really looking forward to the Astros making a big run. And, of course, there are a lot of other teams that we'll talk about next week when the playoffs have gotten started and when games have been completed. And we'll talk about a lot of those games and a lot of those teams and break it down like that. Of course, again, tonight, the Red Sox and the Yankees. I remember the Yankees when I used to watch Reggie, Mr. October, Reggie Jackson back in the day. But, of course, this is not Reggie Jackson. This is Stanton and Judge. Let's see if they can get the Yankees to that next level, which is that 5-game playoff series. Now, let's see if that can happen tonight. Of course, Evalde and those guys for Boston and Devers. And, hey,
they're going to have something to say
about that. They're going to have something to say about it.
Now,
so we shall see.
One thing I'll add about the Astros real quick before we move on. I know you mentioned them old Astros teams that, would do really well, hit really well during the regular season and the playoffs, face a stud, and they just shut them down. The thing about the thing about this Astros team is that I feel like ever since 2017, they get every team's best shot. It's like every team goes into that game with a little bit of extra motivation because they have convinced themselves that they've been wronged by, the Astros based on their cheating scandal. So I feel like over the course of this year, especially now that the fans were back in the stadium, back in the stands, this Astros team have faced playoff environment and playoff type competition really from opening day. I mean, it almost came to a head during the Dodgers series here at Minute Maid, but it's almost like they're just used to teams throwing their best shot at them. So when you get into the playoffs and you're facing, every team's throwing everything at you with the kitchen sink, everything they got, the Astros have already seen it.
That's why I brought it up about their experience.
I think that I think that's going to bode well for them big time. And then you've got a guy like Carlos Correa, who I guarantee you he's going to do everything he can to make sure that the Astros really think twice before letting him get out of town.
Yeah, because he's playing for a new country.
And not paying him the money that will be paid to him. And I guarantee you somebody's going to pay that man a $300+ million contract for 10 years. And you don't want it to be the Detroit Tigers. And you don't want them to take Verlander along with them, which I've heard some murmurs about here and there. So I expect Correa to play big. And this team feels
he always does in the playoffs.
I guarantee you there's a little bit of the thought in the back of the minds of some of these guys like, this could be, not necessarily it. But as far as for this core group of everybody, they already went through, losing Springer and having him move on. Guys like Marwin Gonzalez move on. He's now back, and he's played well since he's come back. But, you look at guys like, you don't see Verlander. He's not going to be here. But, Verlander's gone. Greinke's gone. Yeah. Correa could be gone. This could be the last chance for them to legitimately win a World Series before – maybe this team has to decide to start tearing this thing apart.
I think it is, actually.
If they don't win the World Series this year, and then next year, let's say they end up in the wild card and they're out or something, I could easily see Click start selling off pieces, trading off pieces, and starting over from the ground up because we've seen what he could do. At doing so, he's one of the best team builders in the league. But they know, I guarantee you, they feel like this team feels like if they can go and win a World Series and convince James Click that Carlos Correa needs to stay in town, this core of players needs to stay in town, then they may very well open that championship window up just a little bit wider, and it might last just a little bit longer, and then we could start those DYNASTY talks, because right now, like I said, if they make it to the ALCS, they're already 5 in a row there. That's that right there is an accomplishment within itself. But, It all remains to be seen.
Most of those core guys, as far as the bats, are still in their prime. Of course, you have Bregman, Altuve, Correa. So, Michael Brantley, he's probably up in age, 33, 34.
Right.
But he's always been –
Yuli Gurriel's 37.
Right. So, Brantley's always been a guy, though. His game has never been predicated on athleticism. His game has always been predicated on being cerebral at the plate. Knowing what pitches are coming his way, studying the pitchers. And so he's always been a very smart hitter who makes contact. And so he's always going to have a chance to put the ball in play and always have a chance to be successful as a hitter just because of his IQ at the plate. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Astros this upcoming Thursday.
And Jordan the other night, we were watching Jordan.
Jordan's going to be in left field.
One of the most effortless swings, man. All he does is when he catches that barrel, dude, you look at power hitters over the years, some of them have these big, strong swings. They leave big rivets in the dirt. They sling the bat. You think about Sosa, McGuire, Barry Bonds, violent swing. Not Jordan. Jordan's got this smooth, almost like he's just, playing golf, just putting the barrel of the bat on the ball.
And it goes a long way.
Flies.
Air Jordan.
I can't tell you how thrilled I am that he's coming into this first playoff series here this year, 100% healthy. He's feeling good. He's looking good. He's hitting well.
In left field.
And he's playing. So I think there's something about playing defense. I know designated hitters, you can still be a good hitter, but I think there's something that adds a little bit to you whenever you're not only a part of the offense, but you're a part of the defense too.
Yeah.
I feel like he's really dialed in a different way that I haven't seen Jordan. I haven't seen that demeanor from him, maybe not even ever.
Well, he's feeling healthy. And his knees are feeling good.
The other day when I was at the ball game, he fielded a base hit, turned around and slung it to third. Let me tell you something. He gets the opportunity. He ain't no slouch over there. He does have an arm, and he can use it. And I'm excited to see if the opportunity presents itself here. I'm going to have my eyes squarely on Jordan Alvarez. He's probably going to be the guy that I watch the most, because if Carlos Correa does move on, all right, you're going to lose a leader. I don't think Alex Bregman becomes that guy. Jose Altuve probably naturally moves back into that role.
Yeah.
But I think Jordan Alvarez then becomes your future, like your young, big superstar, the next guy that's going to fill that role, the next guy that's probably going to command 300-something million on the open market.
I agree. Hey, so that's our baseball talk for the day. Obviously, we went long on baseball, but it's the playoffs starting up. It's MLB. A lot of you people watching who may not be baseball fans, sit back and chill. We're going to talk a lot of football, and we're going to talk mostly football, 90% football every week anyway, and a lot of basketball. So it is what it is, and I'm looking forward to the MLB playoffs. Like I said, I'm looking so forward to it, and obviously Eddie Cox is as well. Now, Eddie, of course, the NFL. Now, before we get to the NFL real quick, I have to give my Ohio State Buckeye update real quick, about a minute update. Really, it's not too much to update other than the fact that they moved up to number 7 now. Oregon took an L, which probably wasn't good for Ohio State, but I hear people saying, well, you wanted Oregon to win it out, blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe so, but the fact of the matter is they've only lost one game. Ohio State moved up to 7.
But check this out, Greg.
Okay.
I think that they're getting a gift. We talked about. We really thought Oregon.
I'm saying let them lose.
Look, we really thought Oregon had to go undefeated for them to have a real chance, right? But what if they end up beating an undefeated Michigan in the Big Ten championship?
That's why I never really thought that
they're getting a gift because of how good Michigan is. I got to be honest. I didn't expect them to be this good.
Let me tell you, no.
You know what? I thought the seat was about as hot as it could get in Ann Arbor because disappointing year after disappointing year. But now this looks like a John Harbaugh team that we're used to seeing.
Hey, man, Eddie, you know what? And I agree with that. And I was expecting it this season because I'm saying to myself, it's nowhere in the world that Michigan, and that's why you've always heard me say at some point the football guys, and I think we have Michigan in Ann Arbor this season. And so that's why you've always heard me say at some point.
Which adds a little extra bonus points to the committee if you end up pulling that one out.
Right. And then we play Penn State as well, who are playing Iowa this upcoming week, so that's number 3 against number 4. So that's why the Oregon loss, if Ohio State can continue to run the table, again, I'm not going to get caught up in them making it to the playoffs because I still feel like I said a few weeks ago, if you lose that one game and you put the onus on the committee on that Sunday to vote you in or out, that losing that one game does not bode well for you. I don't care what's going on in your conference, or because they can say, hey, you lost this game, blah, 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 blah. That's why it's always good to go undefeated. Obviously, everyone can't go undefeated. So since you can't go undefeated, and now you're ranked number 7, the Buckeyes seem like they're coming together on the defensive side of the ball. They're starting to gel. They're playing smarter. They're coaching smarter. But what you're saying about Michigan, I've always said that at some point the football gods are going to make this a rivalry again. And I just do not want it to be this year. Like I said last season, I didn't want it to be last season.
Too late.
And when I say make it a rivalry again, I mean
it's already on the
horizon.
horizon.
As far as making sure that Michigan wins. So Ohio State has to keep their dominance over Michigan, even in Ann Arbor. Now, if I had to pick right now, as great as Michigan is playing, because it's not surprising to me that Jim Harbaugh is doing this, because he's had time to really implement his system, even though some may say, well, he's had time. He's had a lot of time even before this season. But I think now he's finding his guys. Guys are buying into the system. They're buying into the culture. He's getting some guys in there who he really believes in that can play some ball. So he has the talent now to really do some things. He feels like he has a quarterback that can compete right now. And you know all his teams are going to always be physical. So they're playing at a high level right now. I like what the University of Michigan is doing right now. If I have to pick them against Ohio State right now, even in Ann Arbor, I would still pick my Buckeyes because I still think my Buckeyes' talent overall is so superior on both sides of the ball. Well, at least on the offense side of the ball. I don't know if Michigan can stop us.
Hey, I got breaking news. The only team Greg's not picking the Buckeyes against is the Dallas Cowboys.
But real quick, we have Maryland this upcoming week, and we should win that game, so we shall see. But as far as that's enough of college football right now, we can talk about some other games. Just don't have the time right now. You know I had to throw my Buckeyes in there, Eddie. But the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, we're going to talk Cowboys. I want to get your take. Okay, the Chargers beat the Raiders last night. Are the Raiders pretenders or contenders? Lamar Jackson passed for over 300 yards. I like what he's doing from the pocket. Of course, the Chiefs, now they have Josh Gordon in the fold now. And Brady's return to Foxborough. What else? Saquon got a big win for the Giants. The Giants finally got off the schneid. The Washington football team finally got off the schneid.
Both New York teams actually got off the schneid.
Absolutely. The Jets and Zach Wilson.
So much for my survival pool. I was like, I was just, you could pick against the Jets almost every week. That's not what I was doing. But I like Titans against Jets. I thought that, that should have been a pretty, easily winnable game for the Tennessee Titans. A Tennessee Titan team that's still trying to flex like they're the best team. Not only in the AFC South, they feel like maybe they had missed an opportunity a couple years ago when they lost to Kansas City in the AFC Championship. But they didn't look like it on Sunday against the Jets. And Zach Wilson, slowly but surely, is starting to get more comfortable. And that's one of those things that in those offenses, those zone scheme offenses, a guy with legs who can get out on the edge, and he gets comfortable. He feels comfortable in the offense. He knows where he's going with the football. It was clear to tell early on he was seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
And then Bill Belichick didn't do him any favors. He's one of the most gifted schemers when it comes to confusing quarterbacks.
Tom Brady.
He knows how to disguise things. But still, he's very good at that, and Zach Wilson was no match. But last week against a guy that comes from that same tree, and Mike Vrabel, and I'm sure they're running some of the same concepts over there. Wasn't the same case. New York, not only did they play well on offense, defensively, they really handled and kept Derrick Henry in check.
Well, that's what Saleh that's where he makes his hay, on the defensive side of the ball. And, of course, to your point about Zach Wilson, he did play well, especially in the second half of that game. Now, of course, he had some throws, and he held himself accountable for it. I like listening to him after the game. He talked about, yes, he's happy with the success that he had, but he pointed out the times where he didn't have success and how he can get better in that regard. And I like that from a young quarterback. Yeah. And like I've always said about these young quarterbacks, that's why I like them playing, because you get used to the speed of the game, you settle down, things become slower to you. You learn more about the offensive scheme that you're playing in, and you just become better, in my opinion, by playing. Yeah. And Zach Wilson, we know he has an arm talent. He made some wonderful throws. So the guy is going to be special. And, of course, the defense is only going to get better. That team is only going to get better. I mean, they'll probably win 3 games this season maybe, but I still like the upside of this team, and especially of Zach Wilson.
And
I like what I saw from him.
Yeah, it's not Matt. It's Mike LaFleur, right? Mm-hmm. The offensive coordinator there in New York for the Jets.
Right.
And I think he's done a great job of really accentuating Corey Davis in this offense. And Corey Davis
was a first-round draft pick.
Absolutely, for the Tennessee Titans. And he had a well of a day against the Titans. And we see that happen a lot of times when a receiver, gets run out of town or let go. I don't think he got ran out of town. They just kind of gave up on him, because he wasn't producing for whatever reason, and they fell in love with A.J. Brown. Mm-hmm. You see that happen. They come back and get an opportunity to hand it to hand their team, their former team, their ass, on a silver platter. They'll do so, and that's sort of what Corey Davis did. He had a phenomenal game.
Right.
But I love the way that LaFleur is using him as sort of like the way you saw Kubiak use Andre Johnson in that same type of scheme. We're going to scheme plays where this guy's going to be wide ass open, and all you got to do is put the ball on him. Okay, it's going to be a play where you're going to be out on the edge. You're not going to have somebody bearing down on you right up the middle of the pocket. You're going to be out on the edge, and you get the ball to Davis. And they've done a great job of doing that. And if they continue to do that, not only is Zach Wilson going to take off, but watch out for Corey Davis.
They win more than 3 games this year?
Look, it's hard to tell, but that defense is starting to get a lot more comfortable.
Right.
When you can stop the run the way they stopped the run on Sunday, you can win a lot of games in this league. You and I both know, Greg, because what happens is whenever your teams get up on you, they run the football because it's safer. If you can stop the run and force them to still have to throw the football even when you're behind, that's how you claw your way back in the games, because you get a sack on third down that goes is a fumble all of a sudden, or you force a tip ball interception. But if a team can go back, turn around, and hand it to Derrick Henry time and time and time again and know they're going to get first downs doing so, then you really don't stand a chance. But that defense has shown that teams aren't going to be able to do that against them. Yeah, they may fall behind, they may start slow, but they're going to stay in ball games where the defense is going to play really scrappy and is going to keep the score close enough to where when their offense does start to get clicking, they're within striking distance.
Yeah. Hey, so we're going to see what the Jets do moving forward. And again, Saquon Barkley for the Giants. I like the fact that Saquon is back looking like Saquon. The first part of the season, of course he wasn't. And that's what happens when you come back from a major knee injury like that. As well as of course he's not wearing a knee brace and all this and that, but you still have to get back into it mentally to where you can really trust making certain cuts and things of that sort off that knee. But he's still showing the explosiveness, the big playability that he's always shown. And, of course, that got the Giants their first win, over a 50-yard touchdown catch. And, of course, the 6-yard touchdown run in overtime where he made some tremendous cuts to get into the end zone, great vision. So that, and then the Giants, if you look at the job that Daniel Jones did this past weekend, he looks like the guy that they wanted him to be. And so if he can be consistent in that regard, you have John Ross now, who was drafted by Cincinnati, who runs a 4.2. You had him catching a long touchdown as well. You have the first-round draft pick from the University of Florida, Tony. Now he's in the fold. And so the Giants have some weapons. So I didn't
expect
like the fact
that to be a slow-moving thing. Very rarely do we see wide receivers come in and just contribute right off the bat.
Yeah.
What Jamar Chase is doing, you mentioned Cincinnati. What Jamar Chase is doing is just unbelievable.
I love what Cincinnati is doing, period. Joe Burrow.
They're coming off a close win against Jacksonville. But while we're talking about the Giants and the rebirth of Saquon Barkley, he's going to –
I didn't like to see those teams win, the Giants and the Washington team, because they're in the Cowboys division.
Right, but with Barkley, he's going to have to be confident. He's going to have to be healthy. He's going to have to be he's going to have to play how he played when he first came into the league, because there's not a lot of help for them up front. They're not real strong on the offensive line.
Yeah.
So I like how they're getting him the ball in the flats. They're using him in the passing game, because sometimes that's what's really going to open up your running game is when you're getting Barkley out on the edge. These linebackers they got to worry about where he's at, if it's going to be a screen or if it's going to be some kind of swing pass, and that's what allows Barkley to really take advantage of what minimal space there is to run the football. So kudos to them for figuring it out, because let's face it, I know that Joe Judge is on a short leash over there. That if they could, they trade. They trade Joe Judge and Daniel Jones for David Culley and Deshaun Watson if they could.
Hey, we're definitely going to talk about the Texans in a second.
They would do that in a blink of an eye. But you know what? If he can get Daniel Jones playing like a first-round pick, like a guy you trade up to draft, which is what they did to get him, they get him playing like that, and then Barkley just does Saquon Barkley things and wows you once or twice a game, and they're going to be all right.
Again,
defensively, they've always been, so-so. They've been able to compete defensively. It's their offense and offensive ineptitude or their inability to protect Jones when they need to throw back and drop back and pass the football that's really, really hurt them.
Because they have the weapons on the outside. Of course, the aforementioned Barkley in the backfield, Daniel Jones, who I like Daniel Jones. I like his athleticism, and he can throw the football. He can make every throw. Of course, he has to be more consistent and not turn the ball over. Of course, last season he turned the ball over a lot. So the talent is there with Daniel Jones, obviously. And the talent is there on offense. Evan Ingram, the wide receivers, Shepard when he's healthy. When those guys are healthy, they have talent on the offensive side of the ball. Now you have your bell cow back in Saquon Barkley, and you saw the difference he makes last game. So the Giants are not as bad. That's why I said last week, they shouldn't be this bad. And so we'll see how they look moving forward, obviously. Now, real quick,
look, this is another thing I wanted to mention before we move on, because I feel like we got to mention this.
Go ahead.
Because who the Giants beat? You know who they beat? You remember? They beat the Saints.
Yeah.
Okay, what's going on with the Saints? Everybody thought, Jameis Winston was going to jump right in, fill in for Drew Brees, and everything was going to be just fine.
Yeah.
They come out, they throw 5 touchdown passes. Although having it be on 140-something yards, it should have been a telltale thing.
Yeah.
They were picking and choosing when to
that.
throw the football
Right.
because they knew if you let him go off all willy-nilly,
It's gonna be some interceptions.
you know what he's going to do. And, ever since that game, I just haven't seen a Saints offense to me that looks like an offense that can, be a playoff winning offense. That's a playoff team. I just don't see it. Defensively, they're still very, very good.
Yes.
They're very strong, although they have put up one stinker so far this year. But they bounced right back and played well. But this isn't on the defense. This is on the quarterback.
Well, I'll tell you.
And what are they going to do? I know they're able to get a touchdown at a Taysom Hill inside the red zone where aside from week 1, Jameis Winston has struggled mightily. But what are they going to do? Are they going to ride with Winston? Are they going to get in on the Watson talks?
I think they're going to ride with him because here's what I do
here?
see right now with Jameis Winston, and I think they're trying to give him every opportunity to be their future quarterback. But I think when I watch Jameis Winston and I put myself in Sean Payton's shoes, I think Sean Payton is over there saying, we may have to find us another franchise quarterback.
You think they're kicking themselves, maybe thinking, we should have made a run at Sam Darnold.
Maybe so. And again, it's still early. I don't want to throw Jameis Winston to the dogs just yet.
Well, Jameis was free, right? Jameis was not free, but they didn't have to give up anything to get him. They signed him as a free agent, and he came cheap.
Right.
So you hope that you can get maximum return on that investment.
Right. And it's still early, so maybe they do, but they don't seem like, of course, you don't have the great Drew Brees anymore, but of course you don't have Michael Thomas as well. And that's a huge loss right there. That's a guy that Jameis Winston would probably be able to lean on. You have Alvin Kamara, who rushed for over 100 yards, so you have him coming out of the backfield. You have him running the ball. But this offense just doesn't have that dynamic element to it right now without Michael Thomas, and they just do not have that explosiveness to it right now. Of course, Jameis Winston can make the throws that maybe Drew Brees wasn't able to make the last couple of years down the field, but it doesn't seem like to your point, it doesn't seem like Sean Payton is trusting him in that regard. Is it that? We shall see moving forward. Is it that, or are these receivers just not getting open? But the game plan doesn't seem as diverse, doesn't seem as wide open. It doesn't seem as innovative and creative as it has been in years past either. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jameis Winston evolves. But I'm looking at it from the standpoint, it's like maybe they may be looking for a franchise quarterback moving forward. But I'm going to give him a few more games. I'm going to give him at least to mid-season to see how he develops and how Sean Payton calls plays with him at quarterback. Of course, you still have Taysom Hill coming off the bench. You're still trying to incorporate him, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Of course, he brings some things to the table that you want for your offense to have things more diverse.
They scored a big touchdown for them over the weekend, and they needed that desperately in that game, even though it didn't lead to a victory.
But it seems like his play calling is just not the same as it always has been. I don't know if it's you don't have Michael Thomas.
Yeah, you don't have Michael Thomas, but when you talk about play calling and how deep in the playbook and what plays are at our disposal, it's always all about head coach and quarterback. Yeah. And the head coach is not going to give the quarterback something that he thinks he can't handle.
They don't trust him.
So apparently, they don't trust Winston to run a big, deep playbook, and they certainly don't trust Taysom Hill to do so, because he's limited in what he can do to begin with.
Passing the football, right.
So this is why I think, man, they've really got to, put their heads together and figure out where they're going to go in the quarterback position. Are they going to trade up in the draft and go draft a guy that they like? I'm not so sure there's a guy coming out next year that's a trade up and go get kind of guy.
Who's really coming
out?
So
then what are you going to do? Like, how long are you going to just, be in this purgatory post Drew Brees? Do you convince him to come back off the set of NBC and come back and play?
I doubt that.
I know that people probably wish that they hadn't been so, eager for him to move on after, how he performed and maybe fell off the cliff a little bit at the end. But clearly, running that Sean Payton offense, there's nobody at their disposal that's anywhere near equipped to run that offense than Drew Brees.
Oh, absolutely.
And if they're going to want somebody to, they're going to have to go and make a hard run at somebody. It's a great opportunity. This is a great opportunity if they really want to go and get a quarterback. Pardon me. What about a 3-team deal? You figure out which team wants to trade for Deshaun Watson, and you go and get their young quarterback.
Interesting.
Because Houston doesn't want Tua Tagovailoa in return, right?
Right.
So you go to Miami and say, hey, or you go to Miami and Houston, and you say, hey, okay, they want Deshaun.
Miami seemed like they regressed a bit.
They want Deshaun. We'll take our chances with Tua. What do we got to do to make that happen? Because we're not going to pay. We're not going to overpay for him because you don't want him and you don't want him. So you want to be stuck with him to sit behind Deshaun? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Let me get Tua on a on a nice little hometown deal or whatever you want to call it. Let me get Tua on a deal, and then maybe we get. And that's just one of the guys. I mean, there's Tua, there's Jalen Hurts. There's a number of guys who could come up. Even Sam Darnold can come up again.
Hurts is playing well.
If Carolina were to jump in back into the Watson thing, which I don't expect them to do as well as Sam Darnold played, even though he kind of looked like some of the old Sam over the weekend.
That, of course.
But I think that's just an interesting thing that the Saints really need to look into. We know that they've been proactive and sort of new age with the way they approach things. Mm-hmm. I think they were one of the first teams to come up with them voidable years with Drew Brees, which is something that all teams are doing now. What else did they try to do? They try to weasel their way around in the salary cap, this, that, and the other. I forget exactly what it was they did before the season, but that was outlawed by the NFL right away. They're like, nope, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't surprise me for them to reach out to the Eagles, reach out to the Dolphins, and say, hey, if you're worried about being stuck with Tua or Jalen, don't.
And make a trade.
Because we'll take him.
Yeah, I mean, hey, again, to our point exactly, it doesn't seem like, to this point, like they really believe in Jameis like I thought they probably would.
And on top of that, Greg, it doesn't help. Like, their offensive line has been so strong and so good every year.
Yeah.
They look like they're starting to regress and decline. Between Armstead, yeah, he's not 100% healthy. But, Ryan Ramczyk, that's a guy they drafted who they like a lot. You'd imagine he continued to get better. But they used to be a dominant and fast offensive line. They'd pull their guards when they'd run. They'd get Armstead out on the edge, out in front of blockers. I mean, he was a mass, and he'd move at a high rate of speed for a guy as big as he was. You're not seeing them do that anymore. And is it health? Maybe it's health reasons, but to me, where their strength was, everybody, I say everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people, when they watch the Saints, it's hard to take your eyes off the skill players because they've always been so good at the skill players. But let's not forget the reason why they're really good. It's them big dogs up front, and the defensive line is really good too.
Absolutely. And the thing about it, it's simple. The offense doesn't instill any fear in anyone anymore. And usually and that's kind of surprising from a Sean Payton-led offense. And when I watch Jameis Winston, one last point about Jameis Winston, when I watch him actually throw the ball now, I never really noticed this in Tampa. As many yards as he threw for, even though he threw for a zillion interceptions as well, it seems like he pushes the ball. I mean, I don't see the explosiveness from that arm like I really thought he had. Now, granted, he can push the ball downfield when he has to throw a deep pass, but it just seems like he's pushing the football instead of actually just letting it rip for some reason. Now, that's just something I've noticed this season.
Well, you know what that comes from, Greg. We talk about it all the time. It comes from comfort in the offense. And there's one thing that you'll see.
Pushing the ball.
You know what shows up really bad is whenever a quarterback's unsure is poor mechanics. A lot of times it's the feet, which his feet have been ugly so far. We've seen him throw several throws off his back foot and across his body, which we all know at the NFL level.
He does have
if you're not Pat Mahomes, then that's not happening.
Right. But we'll talk about him in a second as well.
But there's a laundry list of things going on with Jameis Winston, and I got to be honest. I never thought it was going to be a seamless transition. I never thought Jameis was going to show up and just be Florida State crab leg walking, shoplifting Jameis. It just to me that was never going to happen.
No, I mean I didn't either.
I had a lot more trust in Sean Payton, but to me he is terrified to let Jameis just go.
Well, no, but that's obviously what it seems like. And that was my point initially, is like it just doesn't seem like he trusts Jameis Winston that much, and it's going to be interesting to see moving forward how much, when he gets Michael Thomas back, how much he opens up the playbook and really utilizes Jameis Winston on a variety of different routes and different throws, because when I watch them play now, it just doesn't, it just doesn't seem like he's just letting it rip. He's just letting this guy go. And I don't know what's going on in practice. I don't know if he just doesn't feel he has the weapons outside to really do that. He has someone at the tight end position that can really be that outlet for Jameis Winston. So it's going to be interesting to see.
No, they don't have that. Troutman's been terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
Juwan Johnson has been a touchdown machine, but that's only inside the red zone. And if you look at the receivers top to bottom, without Traquan Smith, it's a really pedestrian group.
It is.
Marquez Callaway highlights the entire group, and we still don't even know really what he is.
That's what I was going to say a second ago. And
Ty Montgomery's still in the league.
What?
I remember when Ty Montgomery was a
running back right
I remember
now?
when he was a running back in Green Bay. No, he's playing wide receiver for the damn Saints.
So
that's the problem.
So that's just it right there. I don't think he has the weapons on the outside to be that explosive on the offensive side of the ball and really feel confident in throwing that football around the yard like that. And again, we'll see when Michael Thomas comes back, because Michael Thomas is one of the top 3 receivers in the game, and he's probably going to make Jameis Winston look a lot better than he's looking right now, just from the mere fact that he's on the field and his presence on the field. So we shall see. But real quick, I want to get your take on Justin Fields. Speaking of rookie quarterbacks real quick, of course you saw Trey Lance get into a game and into the ball game when Garoppolo got hurt. And of course Garoppolo may play again this week.
I know Daryl's ears just perked up.
Yes, they did. And Trey Lance threw that long touch. Guy was wide open. Now Garoppolo, it's mighty funny now how these guys are healing up a lot faster now with these quarterbacks. If you look at Garoppolo now, he's like, hey, I think I just have a bruise. I'll be back. I can play. So he may play this upcoming week.
Well, I know that. I remember the initial reports were like he could be out for a couple
month.
months.
Well,
a month or so.
If you look at Carson Wentz, before I get to Justin Fields, if you look at Carson Wentz, and I've become a Carson Wentz fan for the mere fact that I just feel sorry for the guy sometimes now. I mean, I like Carson Wentz, and I like the fact this guy sprained both ankles, and he played the next week. You know, he really feels like he has to make up for the last couple of seasons in Philadelphia and the criticism that he's received. He was able to get his first victory in Indianapolis, and I'm happy for Carson Wentz. I mean, the fact that he went out there and played on 2 sprained ankles and did what he did, threw for over 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and I'm happy for him. And I like the fact that he's had some success because he's gotten beaten up. And when he sprained both of those ankles, Carson Wentz like, I'm not about to miss any time. These guys, I'm not about to miss any time.
You guys are giving up a first-round pick for me. It's not going to be a second.
I've already gotten traded from Philadelphia. You guys ridicule me for that.
Because you would think they'd want him to miss, if they're losing anyway, you want him to miss a few games anyway. That way maybe you don't have to give up that first-round pick. Nope, he ain't missing a damn thing.
Not a damn thing. He had 2 sprained ankles.
You will pay that first-round pick.
I am playing. But Justin Fields, I like the game plan. I like the point you made last week about David Montgomery. I hate the fact that he got injured, but the fact that they leaned on the run game and the fact that they had max protection for Justin Fields. And again, like I keep harping on the fact about these young rookies playing, let them play. You saw with Trevor Lawrence. Oh, man, I want to get your take on Urban Meyer as well before we go. Oh, man.
Dirty Herb.
Yeah. But Trevor Lawrence played well in that Thursday night game, even though they lost. And I thought that was a game that they were going to win. They found a way to lose that game. But Justin Fields, now, again, you let him play. You put him in more favorable positions. You have more protection for him. You saw he can make every throw on the field. You saw what he can do with his legs. And he was able to get a victory, pass for over 200 yards. You had a receiver that went for over 100 yards receiving. They leaned on the run game like we were talking about. So you put him in a position to succeed, and you see the results. Now this guy, the coach, he's still talking about playing Andy Dalton. I don't know what's up with that, but you're talking about self-sabotage. He's definitely trying to get his ass booted out of town. Maybe, and when I say self-sabotage, I know sometimes that sounds crazy because he's coaching for the Bears. Of course, he wants to be a head coach and all this and that. But sometimes these guys' pride getting away, and they've made a lot of money, and they could care less about certain things that we may care about because they have a big crib and a bank account that's full. So it's like, hey, I can probably go coach college football somewhere, but I'm going to do things my way while I'm here, and I'm not going to acquiesce to what everyone else wants. But there's nowhere in the world you go back to Andy Dalton right now after you've seen your rookie franchise quarterback have success. There's nowhere in the world you go back to Andy Dalton right now. I want to see if he's going to go through with that. But I like what I saw from Justin Fields this past weekend.
Definitely me too. Because I was a little bit worried, and we all knew that there was something off about that prior performance, that prior game. You know, Matt Nagy didn't have anybody prepared, much less Justin Fields. You know, the one guy who they needed to be the most prepared. You know, and that falls squarely at the feet of the head coach. They go back and talk about Andy. I don't think it has to do with, you know,
Justin Fields improved.
I don't think they want to sabotage Justin Fields. Clearly, you saw a game plan, Greg. I mean, you saw it. Max protect. Absolutely. We're going to do everything we can to keep this quarterback on his feet, because when he's on his feet, he could still make plays. They went out and traded for a guy today, Jakeem Grant. You remember Grant, Texas Tech guy,
quick return guy,
real fast.
Yeah.
They're going to put him out there and let him play wide receiver too, which he also does.
Gives him another weapon.
It gives you somebody who can run away from defenders when the play breaks down. I do believe they're setting this thing up for Justin Fields later on in this season. They want to bring Andy Dalton back in because, let's face it, in the NFL, you can't go max protect 1, 2, 3 weeks in a row continuously and let that be your gameplay, especially not since you no longer have David Montgomery, your stud running back.
That may have something to do with it right there.
What was he, 11 for 17?
He ran for over 100 yards.
Fields was 11 for 17. So even though he put up over 200 yards passing, you know, 100 yards rushing, 11 for 17 is still not the kind of offense that Matt Nagy wants to run. Now, I don't know if that's going to be what bodes best for them.
He better not put Andy Dalton back in there.
But I guarantee you, Andy, they're going to go with Andy when he's ready. But I don't know how long it's going to be, but there's no doubt in my mind that they need a little bit longer to figure out what type of offense they're going to run with Justin Fields, because they're not going to run
off season.
They're not going to run. They can't run match protect 24/7 if you can't run the football.
What's the offense coordinator that called the plays this past weekend? Laser or somebody?
Oh,
like
Bill
that?
Laser, yeah.
Bill Laser. He did a great job. Now, whoever the backup running back is, you're still going to have to get him acclimated and just run the football. But you have to keep Justin Fields in there. You can't put him in there, yank him out. I mean, right now, you just have to go with him.
Well, I mean, technically, he's the backup. So when the starter's injured, the backup has to come in. That's the nature of the beast.
I don't know if he has to. Not if you're a guy, your franchise guy that you're going to, that's going to be your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years.
I said if the starter goes down, the backup has to come in. So by the nature of what happened, Justin Fields had to play, because let's face it, if Andy Dalton,
you're saying since Andy Dalton was a starter, he has to come back in?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you said you can't play him, then take him out, play him, then take him out, as far as Fields goes.
Right.
The only reason they played Fields is because Dalton went down. Clearly, they didn't want to play him. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they didn't want to play him.
At that time,
but this is why if they do bring him out, like I said, you know, you and me agree that Fields is the better quarterback, okay? Whether or not they can protect him, whether or not they can build an offense that they can win with consistently, that remains to be seen.
Well, they have to figure it out.
Clearly, I think they don't feel confident in their ability to set this kid up for success. And if you as a coaching staff
they don't need to be coaching right now.
That may be true. But if you don't feel like that,
why did you draft him?
If you don't feel like you can go in there and set him up for success, then I think they're doing him a favor by not playing him. Because any more games like that first game that he played in, if they string a couple of those together, that's going to be real hard on Fields.
But you could also string a couple of games like last game together as well, and you let him build off what he did, and you let him continue to grow. I don't think it bodes well for him to keep putting him in and yanking him out behind Andy Dalton. Now, Andy Dalton, I mean,
it's just the
that's a guy as well.
Offense,
he's immobile. He's immobile. So you have a guy that why are you going to continue to put your best playmaker on the bench? I mean, so we shall see. I mean, if he puts Andy Dalton back in there, I think that says a lot about him as a coach, Matt Nagy as a coach, and as a person. It seems like he's just trying to appease Andy Dalton at this point instead of doing what's best for the team. Justin Fields, in my opinion, I mean, now they have to figure out the game plan. Of course, Dave Montgomery is not there, but they have to figure out a way to still run the football and keep the defense honest no matter who you have. No matter who you have at running back, you have to continue to run the football. You have to continue to protect him, and you have to continue to call plays where you have help protecting him. You can't be idiotic like the game before last. I mean, that was just flat out idiotic right there. He gives you the best chance to win as far as his mobility. Now his confidence is high. I just don't think it bodes well to put Andy Dalton back in there. But we'll see what happens. But Matt Nagy has a mind of his own, and he says that's what he's going to do. We'll see if that's the case.
I would love to see Justin Fields, you know, continue to take the snaps. But you know, you've got an offensive line that's old as dirt. Well, and they're not getting any younger. They're not getting any better. They're not playing any better.
What's the guy's name over there, Trent?
Jason Peters.
Jason Peters. When I say he's still in the stands.
Cody Whitehair, he's been in the league forever. Their best linebacker, maybe their right tackle, Jermaine Infidi, and he's been in the league forever. They're old on the offensive line. They got to give a lot of help to Justin Fields. I just don't think
they have to do it.
I don't think they're prepared for it yet, and you're not beating any other team but maybe the Lions or the Texans, only being able to drop back and pass the football 15, 16, or 17 times.
But I think that was a step up from the game before.
Oh,
I don't
certainly
think it's
was.
Gonna always
it certainly
be,
was.
I don't think it's going to always be. 11 out of 17.
I just don't know if they're ready to unleash him.
Maybe this time it'll be 20 passes, and I just think Matt Nagy. I think he's just really showing his ineptitude as a head coach.
And your
more than
backup
anything.
running back is Damian Williams, who does something for you.
Williams.
But he's definitely not a between the tackles running kind of guy. He was a guy who they used in the passing game a lot in Kansas City.
Give him the football.
And he's played well, but you can do that. I'm just saying I don't know what they're trying to do. Clearly they're trying to win.
We'll see this upcoming week.
They're trying to win and they're trying to protect Justin Fields.
Well, that's what they'll claim. I think it's more stubbornness out of Matt Nagy more than anything, and him maybe not feeling comfortable in his own coaching. He needs to go. If he puts Andy Dalton back in there this week, he needs to flat out go. I'm serious. He needs to go anyway. But come on, bro. You got to let the guy keep playing. You have to figure it out on the offense side of the ball. Laser and these guys have to call a game that's conducive to his skill set, get him outside the pocket, let him do some things, and you have to be innovative. You can't be scared talking about, I don't know which game plan to put in because blah, 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 blah.
It's just, it's hard to be really, really innovative and have a really diverse playbook, the type of playbook you need to win at this level when you've got a quarterback limited in that area.
See if it'll work again next week. Until it doesn't work again, you put Andy Dalton back in there, he should be fired next week.
Well, Andy Dalton's going back in, I promise you.
Okay, his ass should be fired next week.
He may be fired at the end of the year, but he's going back in there.
We'll see, and I think that's one of the dumbest moves of the week.
If they set this whole thing up to turn it over to Justin Fields, they feel like he's ready, let's say week 10, week 11, and they turn it over.
It's going to be the same offensive line.
Exactly, but you'll have a quarterback who is more, in depth in the playbook, and so you can run a lot more stuff.
He's ready to play right now. Trust me, he's ready to play right now. Why is he no more ready to play than Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson? He's ready to play right now. I think they're making all these excuses in Chicago for whatever reasons.
Greg?
Huh?
For what, though?
What do you mean for what?
For what? Why would they make excuses? Why would they want to hold back their number 1 draft pick? I don't think they want to.
Because that just seems like that's what they're doing. I don't know why. I don't know the question of that. A lot of people don't know the answer to the question of why Matt Nagy does some of the things he does.
I just think
we don't know why he did what he did. We don't know why he did. Well, why would he do that in the first game if you know your line is terrible?
No, the Lions. I said they realize the Lions are terrible.
They are. But I just think also Justin Fields, when you put in a game plan that's more conducive and that puts him in a position to succeed, you see what the guy can do. I don't think Andy Dalton puts you in a better position to win with an offensive line. You're talking about a guy that can't move, and I like Andy Dalton. I like the redhead. Don't get me wrong. TCU, like the redhead. But I just think you roll with Justin Fields right now. You get him out of the pocket. You do whatever you can to protect him, and you see what happens.
Look, clearly,
so we'll see what happens.
They're trying to make Andy Dalton be Alex Smith. They want to make sure. Wow. I really think that's the playbook that he's following is the Andy Reid playbook, where you hand it over to Patrick Mahomes right at the end of the year of his rookie season, and then he takes the league by storm the very next year.
Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Kansas City Chiefs weapons, Chicago Bears weapons. You're putting your best playmaker on the bench again. Now, if you're saying that Matt Nagy feels like he's going to be the coach next season regardless, and he can afford to sit Justin Fields the entire season because he feels Andy Dalton gives him the best chance to win.
I think he knows he's coming back, because if he didn't, I think he'd be out there.
We'll see.
Because he'd be like, why do I care if Fields gets hurt or not? Because I'm going to put him out there, and this is my last season anyway if he doesn't win, so I'm going to put him out there. If he breaks both legs, I don't give a damn because we're screwed anyway.
But yeah,
that's what tells me I think he's got reassurances that he's not going
anywhere.
anywhere.
Well, maybe he does, but I hope that's not the case. I really hope that's not the case, but I just don't like the guy as a head coach for Justin Fields. And I think a lot of that, more so, I don't think that's him being intelligent and really thinking things out, what's best for Justin Fields. I think he's doing it out of stubbornness and just trying to show people that he's going to do what he wants to do. And I think his ass is going to be out of there next year. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But enough about the Chicago Bears. We'll see what happens, and maybe he will be Maybe Andy Dalton will be back in the mix next week, but I think that's probably the dumbest decision of the week, in my opinion. I really do. I honestly do. And it's not about the fact that Justin Fields went to Ohio State. And I just think you have a guy, you put him out there, you let him play, you design a game plan that's conducive to his skill set, and he gives you the best chance to win. I just honestly do. But let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals for a minute, talking about quarterbacks. I love what Kyler Murray is doing in Arizona.
Well, how could you not? I mean, I think we expected them to come out of the gate and be good on offense. I don't think we expect them to be this good defensively. And the thing about it is the defense doesn't have to be like an all-world defense. Not whenever you've got an offense.
And they're physical. They're good, too.
Not whenever you got an offense that's, putting up 30-plus points a game, sometimes 40. Kyler Murray is everything that people who watched him play in college imagined he would be. And we're
still going to talk Cowboys and Texans.
All he's got to do is just stay healthy, and the sky's the limit for Kyler Murray. He's got this team rolling. The way he plays, the way he moves around the pocket, the way he can escape the pocket, the amount of velocity he's able to get on a football when he's throwing on the run, it's unbelievable for the size of a player that he is.
5'9", right.
He's just a small guy, but he plays so big.
He does.
And then, I'm not sure if it's more, it's a combination of both the development of Murray and the expansion of the offense. And sort of, Cliff Kingsbury, you can't just come in here and run your offense you're running at Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
The field is just set up differently. You can't run the same stuff. He's evolving too. He's learning what works, and he's also learning how to lean on his staff, which is something a lot of coaches, college coaches, don't learn how to do until they get at the NFL level. Really lean on your staff. I'm not talking about let the defensive coordinator call the defense. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about lean on your offensive staff. Learn how to delegate certain things so you're not thinking about a million things on the sideline. You only have to worry about calling the play and communicating with Kyler. Y'all be, two like Siamese twins. Y'all gotta have the same brain. That's what you got to focus on as an NFL head coach if you're going to be an offensive guy at the NFL level coming from college, and that's what Cliff Kingsbury's been able to do. They've made moves in the offseason. They went and got people that they're able to do.
Well, look at A.J. Green.
That's one of the names that I was going to bring up. A.J. Green, and then finding young receivers that can play well. Rondale Moore. Yeah,
Christian Kirk. And
Kirk. I said Kirk. See, Christian Kirk at Texas A&M.
Yeah, Christian Kirk. And then you think about Chase Edmonds. He rushed for over 100 yards last week. So the offense is balanced. And then what you have from Kyler Murray, who I've always been high on ever since he came out of Oklahoma. You know that, Eddie. Yep. And so he's at an MVP pace right now. There's a few guys we could talk about. Dak Prescott that's playing at an MVP pace right now. Derek Carr up until last night when my first cousin, his Chargers went down there and won that game. Justin Herbert is playing at an MVP pace right now. But Kyler Murray, they're balanced on offense right now to go along with those weapons. And when you add a guy like A.J. Green to go along with DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green can still play. Now he doesn't have to be the number one option. So he's actually facing a lot of single coverage, and the guy can still run. When he's healthy, he can still get it done. So
and he gives you a big target in the red zone, a huge target
in the red zone.
And that's one of the places where he can really make his presence felt.
And Kyler Murray's not turning the ball over.
And a big part about it is, one thing that I've seen is like Kyler Murray, him and his understanding of what's up, Skrilla? His understanding of what Kingsbury's trying to do and what they want to do, his understanding and his how deep he is in that playbook, it's clear. Because early on in Kyler Murray's career, too often he would take off running. And quarterbacks like that don't do that just because they know they can run. Well, he's a fast guy. He's got legs. He's going to use them, You take what the defense gives him. Not always, because had they been a little bit more comfortable in their playbook, they would have gone to their third or fourth progression. They would have understood that they don't have to take off running. They could run towards the line of scrimmage but still keep their eyes downfield. Kyler's got over 100 yards rushing this year. I think he's rushed 23 times. But he's not trying to do that. That's like a last resort for Kyler. He's going through his progression 1 to 4 or 5, and even going back through it again sometimes. Yeah. And that's what's so impressive about what he's doing.
Dumping the ball off to his outlet.
The cerebral way he's playing is so evident that it's impressive. You talk about smart quarterbacks, cerebral quarterbacks. I don't always hear Kyler Murray's name get brought up. You know, it's always the Bradys, the Aaron Rodgers. That. Let me tell you something. This kid is playing football on an intellectual level that other quarterbacks in the league just aren't playing it on right now.
He is.
So,
he's very smart.
And don't just look at him as just an athlete. You got to be able to have that mindset. You got to be able to have that mental fortitude for a guy his size to be able to play the way he's playing and to be able to protect himself the way he does. You got to have eyes in the back of your head and on the side too, and he's got that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's not for sure within the first 2-3 seasons that he was in the NFL that he was going to get hurt.
Right.
You know, we saw it happen with Tua already, and Tua's even a bigger guy. And you know, I thought we were going to see him get hurt.
Well,
and we haven't seen it yet. I know you didn't.
Yeah. Because of the reasons that you stated before, and this is what I said when he was coming out of college, I like the way that he protects himself, and he always knows where he is on the field, and he always knows how to get down, get out of bounds. I've never seen him really take a big hit.
No.
As much as he ran the ball, I've never seen him really take a big hit.
He still hasn't taken one
at the
NFL level that I've seen.
But you're right, Eddie. He is playing very smart right now.
I mean, it took Justin Fields, and not to pick on Justin,
but
it took him like one preseason game to take the biggest shot he's taken all year long.
Let me say this about Justin Fields. And the points that you're making about Justin Fields and Matt Nagy, I'm not saying that they're invalid. I'm just saying that I would go ahead and play him, and I would, as a head coach, I would figure out. I mean, you have to be smart as a head coach to get
I get it. The ceiling is higher if he plays.
But you know what?
The floor is also lower, but the ceiling's higher.
Right. The validity I give you on that is maybe Matt Nagy doesn't feel confident in his own ability to get Justin Fields in the right position.
I completely agree with you.
I mean, I just think that's so lame as a head coach for this guy to draft this guy and have all this time to prepare and not know best ways to put him in
scared money don't make no money. And let me tell you something. Back to the Cardinals, Kingsbury, he doesn't play scared. And this is one of those things, you know, we talked about. One of the big things was how was the defense and offense, how were they going to be able to balance things? And I think they've done a great job. You know, I thought losing Kenyon Drake was going to be a huge loss for them. But, you know, James Conner has come in, picked up, and filled the role very well. And he's a little bit better at protecting the football, I think, than Drake was. And that's boded well for them, too, because they're not turning the football over.
Right.
How many interceptions has Murray thrown this year? He's thrown 4 interceptions.
Okay.
But that's because they're pushing the ball down the field a lot.
Okay.
You know, 4 interceptions,
yeah,
9
they're throwing
touchdowns.
a lot of passes. They're throwing a lot of passes.
Yeah.
But he is playing smarter as far as, I guess the point I was making, I didn't realize he had thrown 4 interceptions, but he is making a lot of wise decisions as far as not running the football and getting the ball to his outlets and check downs, and he's getting everyone involved, and they have a lot of talent around him, and he realizes that, and he's utilizing everyone. So I like what Arizona's doing right now.
I mean, you go back to they're really – bringing A.J. Green to fill in for Larry Fitzgerald was the biggest move of the offseason for them, if you want to ask me. And then adding J.J. Watt, that adds a veteran presence on the defense that helps take some of the pressure off of Chandler Jones, and that's paid huge dividends. Chandler Jones, you talk about DPOY. You want to talk about DPOY? I know your boy Diggs has done a lot this year, but Chandler Jones, if we're going to talk about 1A and 1B, you know, Diggs may be up there, but Chandler Jones would definitely get my vote for defensive player of the year.
He
had 5 sacks in the first game.
Yeah, the first game. I mean that's a season for most defensive ends or linebackers or whatever. So the Cardinals are looking good right now. I mean, there's so many teams we can talk about. We just don't have the time today. The Browns won 14-7 over the Vikings, and we don't know exactly how Baker Mayfield is going to fare. I mean, they're leaning on that run game big time. But let me ask you this before I get your take on Urban Meyer. I mean, I pretty much know what your take is. I mean, it's pretty much everyone's take. It was a stupid decision by Urban Meyer. You have to realize, let's just get that out of the way right now. Urban Meyer.
Well, for those of them who don't know, tell them what happened.
Well, he got caught at his restaurant in Columbus, Ohio, after that game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, haven't talked a lot about the Bengals, but I love what Joe Burrow is doing. This guy is a franchise quarterback coming back from that knee injury, and you have Jamar Chase, who didn't play well in the preseason, but he's showing why they drafted him as high as they did in the first round with the 5th pick, I think it was, at wide receiver. So you have that combination for the next 10 years at least right there. But Joe Burrow is a certified franchise quarterback. Again, coming off an ACL injury, MCL injury. I love what the Bengals are doing right now. Joe Mixon is always kind of nicked up, but he's a physical runner, 200 and some pounds. So we'll see what Cincinnati continues to do in that division. But the prospects look good for Cincinnati. But while Jacksonville, who I thought, before I actually went to bed, who I thought was going to win that game and woke up, they had lost another one. They're 0-4. Urban Meyer, the new coach at Jacksonville, former Ohio State coach, former Florida coach, national championships in college, has a restaurant in Columbus from what I understand, and a video showed him having a young lady dance close to him on his lap or near his lap or whatever.
Oh, she was all up on him.
She was
man.
all up on him.
Blonde,
He definitely wasn't
bombshell.
pushing. He definitely was not pushing her away.
No,
Supposedly
as a
he
matter
was
of
in
fact.
town. Supposedly he wanted to stay back so he can visit his grandchildren.
Yeah, matter of fact,
He wasn't visiting his grandchildren that night.
I even heard he might have had the hand down in the bread warmer somewhere.
Yeah, I saw that too. I saw what they said he probably had. But you know what, Eddie? And you know what? That's inexcusable. Like the owner, Khan said that's inexcusable. And he put out a statement, and he said all the right things about how Urban Meyer is going to have to regain their respect. You know, as a team, as a head coach, the players are going to have to learn to respect him again. It's flat out inexcusable. Urban Meyer, now there are a lot of people that's calling for his firing. But I'm sure in retrospect right now, he wishes he hadn't done that.
Oh,
but the thing about it is, of course he realizes
that.
that.
Smell good.
But I know, right? I was going to say that a second ago. I left it alone. But what Urban Meyer has to realize, now these players realize that, of course, you're making rules that you can't keep yourself. But as a football player, if that was me, it wouldn't be the fact that he did what he did. Of course, he's not supposed to do that. He's married, and it's not a good look as a head coach. It's not a good look as a leader. But it's not surprising. These coaches kick it. Of course, he had a few drinks. He had some feel-good in his system, and he was tripping with himself. But the thing you have to realize as a head coach, you have to realize you're on camera. You're probably getting videoed.
Especially in Columbus.
Especially in Columbus. So you can't be out there. You cannot let your guards down like that.
Look,
I mean, he should have been home with his family or just shouldn't have been in that situation, period. So I'm not condoning his actions. But my point is, these coaches kick it. They're gonna do some things that they're not supposed to do. But he has to realize that that's on camera. There are people in this restaurant who are probably going to make sure that goes viral, and that's exactly what happened. Now, your team, and supposedly, Eddie, he did not apologize to the team as a whole. Supposedly, allegedly, he did it in certain position groups, and then he called off the meeting Monday, allegedly. And so a lot of people on the team, a lot of his players are thinking that he's actually running from the situation. So he has to gain the respect back from those players. And again, the players have to realize that these guys, they're going to be guys, but at the same time, you can't be that stupid as a head coach.
No, as a head coach, you are essentially the face of the franchise.
You're the face of the franchise.
Wear the uniform. You know, you are the ambassador for the franchise. And, you know, it's a really bad look for Urban Meyer. Now, before the season, I remember, you know, we were talking about the Jaguars, and I brought up, you know, that the locker room really wasn't completely sold on Urban Meyer's ability to lead an NFL team. They thought he was still doing some things a little bit, you know, amateurish or collegiate-ish.
0-4 doesn't help.
And, you know, but, you know, honestly, the record aside, you know, I don't think anybody expected the team that had the #1 pick in the draft just to come out of the gate and start winning ball games just because you drafted Trevor Lawrence.
I thought they would be a little better, though.
And they're starting to compete.
Yeah, they are.
You know, the Texans wiped them off the map in game one.
You're right.
They started to compete. But, you know, there was doubt almost from the get-go inside the locker room from players whether or not Urban Meyer was capable of leading men, not young men, but full-grown men. Okay, yeah, and then the issue with that,
racist things go on back in college at Howard.
He missed that, however he missed that, or he overlooked that, or it wasn't important to him at the time. That was a big deal. You know, this isn't college, you know, where that stuff gets swept under the rug. That's out in the forefront. You know, the players, you know, at this level, they care about it. They have a platform. They'll use it. They'll speak out about it. But you know, it bothers me. What bothers me the most about this is that Urban Meyer, the head coach of the football team, decided not to fly back with the team. If you want to do something crazy or whatever, okay. But if you're going to do that, you better make damn sure you're sitting in a rocking chair and you got them grandbabies on your lap. If you tell the team you're not going to ride back with the team,
he saw him earlier that day.
To me, that's the biggest part of this. Of course, now you know
he saw him earlier that day, but then at nighttime he had to go kick.
You're a married man. A lot of people, you know, whether you're aware of it or not, you know, Christianity is a big thing in the NFL. Inside NFL locker rooms, there's a lot of players that will lose a lot of respect for a man who will cheat on his wife, and not only do that, but let it be
do it publicly.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
You lose a lot of respect for the locker room. The owner obviously doesn't want anything to do with anything like that. That's not the type of person they want representing their franchise. Yeah, you can call it what you want. Guys will be guys or whatever, but that's not something that they want to put and say, hey, this is what the Jacksonville Jaguars are about. You know.
You know what? I totally agree with that, and I'm not saying that they condone that, but the fact
no, they certainly don't. We know
the fact, right. The fact that if you're a man, you know men are going to be men and boys are going to be boys. Yeah, maybe you lose some respect for him, but I think most of the respect that you lose for him is not the fact that he's cheating on his wife, is the fact that he's stupid enough to do it in the fashion that he did it in. I think that's more so where the lack of respect or the loss of respect comes from more than anything.
And also, too, Greg, I mean, think about it. They're coming off another big loss, okay, another loss in this season. A lot of times, most coaches, when they're losing like that, the first thing they want to do, they can't wait to get back to the facility. They can't wait to get back in the film room, to the drawing board, so to speak, because they have to figure out what they're going to do to pull this team, out of the mud and coach like an Urban Meyer coach team or play like an Urban Meyer coach team. And the fact that the first thing on his mind was to leave the team to travel by themselves.
That was surprising.
This is a guy where, the means of everything, it ain't nothing for him to come home, do whatever he's got to do, get the thing started at the facility. You want to go see the grandkids, jump on a plane, fly 5 hours and go back and see the grandkids, whatever it is.
Well, see, where I would lose respect for him as a head coach is exactly that. And that's the first thing that struck me was the fact that they're 0-4. You should be doing everything possible to get this ship righted in the right direction as far as your football team. And you go back with your team, you win as a team, you lose as a team.
Yeah, you don't distance yourself from the team after a loss.
So that was more surprising to me than anything, the fact that they're 0-4 and he's feeling happy enough or giddy enough to want to go out and hang out and kick it and stay in Columbus, Ohio, and kick it instead of feeling down in the fact that they're 0-4. And I think his football team, the players as a whole, maybe if they were 2-2, and again, they still wouldn't be cool with him being on camera doing that. But the fact that they're 0-4, they're saying to themselves the same thing that you're talking about. Why wouldn't you come back on the plane with us? And why wouldn't you worry about getting us headed in the right direction? The fact that they're 0-4, losing, they're already upset about the fact that they're 0-4. And so they're already probably having some doubts about you as a head coach. And maybe not. Maybe before that incident, maybe they see how you operate as a head coach. And maybe a lot of those guys are optimistic because who you have at quarterback and knowing that things are going to get better, like you're saying. And like I thought, they're competing now. But the fact that you would actually, after an 0-4 start, feel like that's what you wanted to do, that says a lot right there. So he lost a lot of cool points.
It shows that you're.
He lost a lot of cool points.
Shows that your head's in the wrong place.
That's the
NFL
first
coaches
thing that stood out to me.
They're the hardest working coaches, in the business. I know college coaches go year round and all that, but let me tell you something. In the NFL, it's tough because you're competing against the best of the best, the very best every week. There's no
maybe he felt
there's
good
no Appalachian State on your record or on your schedule.
Maybe
I should
he felt
say.
Good that they're being competitive.
And then on top of that, Greg, you hear these little reports, you read these little reports. Who knows how much validity they have? Maybe they're just little rumors that are around. But then you hear about, maybe Urban has his eyes set on USC, and maybe he doesn't want to stay long-term at the Jaguars, and maybe he realizes he's a college coach. And then so
that's what I talk about self-sabotage.
And then you start
when these
seeing,
guys feel like they have money in the bank and they have other opportunities already.
Yeah, then you start seeing him do things that NFL coaches never do. And it reminds me a lot of Lane Kiffin when he was at the NFL level. Like, I'm going to line up for a 76-yard field goal. How about that? But I'm just saying, doing things that NFL coaches don't do, it shows that they know that if things fall apart at the NFL level, they're just going to go back to college and be a great college coach.
Yeah, but it's not a good look. And the thing, he better apologize to his wife, and he better to really be sincere. Now,
he did. And
what's the owner's name?
Shad Khan.
Shad Khan. I didn't know his first name, but owner Khan. Now, he gave him the benefit of the doubt, but not so much the benefit of the doubt. He said that it was a terrible and inexcusable. And he's going to see how it goes from here. But Urban Meyer can't make any more mistakes. Now, maybe he learns from this and realizes, bro, like you're saying, bro, you're in the NFL now. But what he better square it away with his wife and the players. You have to get these guys and you have to talk to them. You can't be in a position room and act like you're running from the situation. You have to hold yourself accountable in that situation.
You can't
and
have
from all
that
accounts
doubt.
right now, he's not doing that. He hasn't done that.
You can't have that doubt creep into your players' minds, Greg, that maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars and the players on this team aren't my number one priority.
Absolutely.
You can't have that doubt anywhere in their minds. And right now, I don't know how every single player in that locker room, all 60 or 70s, what is on the practice squad, 53 plus, 12 or 13, so 66, all 66 players. I don't know how they're not all thinking, man, I bet you Herb really doesn't care if this works out or not because he's just going to go take the job at USC.
Well, that's the way it seems. Well, you know what?
Or wherever. Insert any big name college school.
Well, he needs to be cognizant of that. But again, that's the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that they're 0-4. If they're 3-1, that's a different story. But the fact that they're 0-4 and he decided to do that, it didn't sit well with me. Obviously, it didn't sit well with his players and the owner, and so he's put himself in a situation right now where he has to dig himself out of this hole. So we shall see.
Yeah,
but let me
it's
get
only
your take.
getting uglier. But this is where I want to go
What's the score
next.
of the baseball game right now?
I'll pull it up for you in just a second. Before we get too far, we don't leave enough time. We got to talk about probably what was
about 10 minutes, about 10, 12
probably
minutes.
what was the most anticipated matchup. Now we promised Big Boy in there we were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it, and it would be a huge oversight on ours if we didn't.
Right. And I want to get your take on Big Ben.
So Sunday night, Tampa Bay travels to New England. Brady returns to go take on Bill Belichick for the first time. And you know what? It did not disappoint. I know the weather was definitely a factor.
Yeah.
But just the way both teams competed, and Mac Jones coming down in the second half or coming out in the second half,
Mac Jones is a real deal
and
as a
really
rookie quarterback.
trying to take it to a defense that, let's face it, that defense is an all-world defense. Mm-hmm. And he went out there and did his.
I mean, there's a lot of injuries.
He
on
did
that
his.
defense
He
now,
did his
especially
best.
in the defensive backfield.
This is true. I know they're banged up back there.
Carlton Gray is out.
Yeah. But they didn't hesitate, or they didn't. They didn't keep Jones
Richard
on a
Sherman
short
played.
leash.
He just got off the bus.
Yeah, he actually played well.
He did play pretty well.
Which shows that he was in good shape. Which is, kudos to him.
Absolutely.
But they didn't hold anything back with Mac Jones. They were taking shots. They're young as hell at receiver. They went and got some tight ends, which they were finally able to really use. I know there was a Jonnu Smith sighting. I've been waiting on it all year long,
Right.
and he played well. But to me, it was just the level of competition between these two teams. You could tell, like, both squads, not just Bill and Tom, but both squads wanted that one really badly. When you think about it in the grand scheme of things, had New England been able to win, it probably bode better for their season. If Tampa Bay drops a game here or there against a team like that, none of us are going to sit here and think, well, that's really going to hurt them later on in the season, because we feel like they've kind of got a stranglehold when it comes to the NFC South.
Excuse me.
You just worry about maybe Carolina there, but there's no doubt that they are the cream of the crop in that division.
Right on.
So you felt like maybe New England needed it a little bit more, but both teams played it like a playoff game. It was phenomenal. You could tell that Belichick had a game plan that he probably been working on since the day Tom walked out the door.
From the defense side of the ball?
Since the day Tom walked out the door, he'd been working on that game plan, and they were able to exploit some of the weaknesses they have on that offensive line with some sneaky little blitzes. But
kept changing the coverage.
I really feel like
pre-snap.
I felt bad for old Nick Folk, because I thought that Mac Jones did a fantastic job setting them up with that final drive, doing his own impersonation of Brady. Here we are. We've been there so many times with Brady. There's a minute.
I think they probably should have went for it.
Minute and a half instead of punting the football when they did.
Instead of kicking the football.
Kicking the field goal.
Right, the field goal.
Okay, on the last drive, yeah.
Because Mac Jones has been having all that success all game, even though the weather wasn't good. I thought maybe that was a better opportunity to get the 4th and 3.
Yeah, because you're still going to give the ball back to Brady, but Brady hadn't shown at all in that entire game to move the ball as quickly as he needs to.
50-some seconds left.
It just like it happens. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
But, of course, there's a lot of rumors and stuff about, like, that's not Bruce Arians' offense they're running over there. That's Brady's offense that they're running.
No doubt.
And so that Bill Belichick knows some of Brady's favorite plays that he likes to go to in those type of situations, because he's been doing it for 2 decades, under his tutelage. Mm-hmm. So I really think, like, had they made that field goal, if anybody could have stopped Brady from going down and getting a field goal to win, it probably was going to be Bill Belichick. But the field goal, it bangs off the left upright. Mm-hmm. As about as loud it can be, And, oh, man, I felt bad for Mac Jones. I thought he did everything he could to just kind of, in one game, like, wrap everything up and put a bow on this microcosm of him being the guy to take over for Tom Brady. And so my takeaway from that game is, like, hey, Mac Jones is pretty damn good.
Oh, he is. He is. He's playing better than any rookie quarterback at this point. And it's not surprising. I mean, you go to New England, and just the way he plays the game and the way they put him in a position to succeed as far as the way they call the offensive plays, I just think he's a guy, he's definitely – and to me, he actually looked like Tom Brady out there. When the game first started, I was like, if you didn't look at his number –
If you weren't wearing number 55, I think you were Tom Brady.
Well, you're wearing number 10.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
It makes me laugh every time I think about that.
Wasn't that crazy, man? Wasn't that crazy? But, hey – he actually looks like Tom Brady out there on the field, and he plays like Tom Brady. I mean, getting the ball to different receivers, playing smart, playing within the confines of the offense, and I think he's going to be a great quarterback. I love Mac Jones as a quarterback and what he's doing in New England. And it is kind of deflating that he wasn't able to come out with that victory. Of course, it's not deflating for any Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, but Tom Brady, if he would have gotten that ball back with 50-some seconds, woo, even in that weather. Now, the only thing I hate, the weather was so bad. You really couldn't really get a chance to see the vintage Tom Brady. And even though Bill Belichick put him in a situation to where once he got inside the red zone, he really couldn't deliver. He had to settle for field goals. I still think if the weather was better, and of course you didn't have Gronkowski as well, so you didn't have Gronkowski. So Tom Brady didn't play terrible, didn't play bad, but it was obvious that Belichick did some things to kind of confuse him. But again, the weather didn't help, and the fact that you didn't have Gronkowski didn't help as well.
I just think it really lived up to the bill, even though it wasn't a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I got you. Now, let me ask you this before we get out of here, and I guess we'll talk NBA next week. Okay, I'm going to say a few tidbits about the NBA right now. Andrew Wiggins got vaccinated. Still don't know what's going on with Kyrie Irving with the Nets, but that's why, real quick, that's why right there, speaking of the Nets, who most people feel will win the NBA championship, that's why I'm not crazy about Kyrie Irving. Now, granted, it's a situation right now.
That shows you why Houston never wanted him back in a James Harden trade.
Bro, he's somebody to me, he's just so selfish. Now, I don't want to make a big whoop-to-do about him not getting vaccinated because that's his own right, but it's not surprising that the guy that's in this position is Kyrie Irving. It's just not. And he's going to be the guy that derails the Brooklyn Nets this season, in my opinion. I just don't trust the guy. The guy is not – and he's a great talent. In my opinion, he's a little bit overrated as a talent. Yeah, he can go for 48, 45 on any given night, but I'm not as sold on him as most people are, even as a basketball player, even though he's a great offensive basketball player. I got to be honest about that. But he's not this offensive player that most people – he's not AI. I put it like that. He's no damn Allen Iverson.
Not even close.
Not even close, in my opinion. So, but – Andrew Wiggins got vaccinated with Golden State, and I think Golden State and the Lakers, now, of course, we'll talk more about it as the weeks progress. I think with Andrew Wiggins now back in the fold, with Klay Thompson coming back in the fold, James Wiseman coming back in the fold, you see, of course, they played a preseason game last night. Jordan Poole scored of course, it's preseason. But Golden State has a squad. I see Golden State making it to the conference finals, playing against the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. Now that Andrew Wiggins is vaccinated, he says he felt like he had to continue his career. But we'll talk more basketball. Of course, Kawhi is out with the Clippers. We'll talk Rockets. We'll talk more basketball next week. But I love what Golden State is looking like in that Western Conference. And, of course, Zion, he's coming back from the knee surgery. He vows that the Pelicans will get into the playoffs this year. We'll see. He's coming back from that foot surgery, So a big old guy like that, always getting injured, we'll see. But let me get your take on Ben Roethlisberger. My dad texts me. He say, Big Ben looks terrible. I text back. I said, I totally agree. What is going on with Big Ben? And I'm going to say this real quick about the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. Love Mike Tomlin. I know he's invested in Ben Roethlisberger, and he's going to give Ben Roethlisberger the benefit of the doubt, and he's not going to throw him to the dogs right now. Maybe it's because he doesn't feel like he has a viable option at backup. I still want to see Dwayne Haskins get a shot.
Yeah, but it's a big risk, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and then you don't want to give up after 4 games. Now, I think if they lose a couple of more games in a row, or they're cleared out of the playoff picture, you see what you have in Dwayne Haskins or Rudolph. But of course I want to see Dwayne Haskins.
I think
you brought him over there.
You already know what you have in Rudolph and Haskins. You know, has an opportunity to do something like a Sam Darnold, even though he didn't get very much playing time in Washington. Go somewhere else, learn the game from a different perspective, and then maybe try to hone some of that talent that we all know that you've got in there. You know, in that athletic vessel that you pilot around.
Big Ben looks done, bro.
You pilot around every day.
Done.
You can play. You know, you just got to get out there and do it.
About 5 minutes. I want to get some Cowboys.
He hasn't. Ben hasn't looked good, but to me, it's age. It's old age because
he needs to go to Tom Brady's school of nutrition or whatever.
Yeah, maybe, but Ben's a bigger guy. He's not a lean, twiggish kind of guy, slim guy like Brady. He doesn't have that model figure. He's a big, heavy guy.
Yeah.
And we all know at the quarterback
position, the mobility
position
is not there right now like it used to be.
When it goes, it goes. And it's starting to go a lot faster this year than it ever has gone for Ben. And maybe if he doesn't get hurt in previous years, we see it. We see it as earlier. Mm-hmm. But right now, it just hasn't looked good.
Yeah, I know. And the thing about it, I don't want to pile on Big Ben right now because, to be honest with you, I didn't expect him at 39 to come back and be superb, the Ben Roethlisberger of old. But the way he's looking on a lot of these throws, missing wide open receivers, it's just he looks completely done, in my opinion. Now, I will say this about the Steelers, and we'll see. He may have a great game this upcoming week, and maybe the narrative changes. Big Ben is not done. He's not finished, and we'll see what happens. Okay, maybe they do need to stick with him. We'll see. But if they're going to use Najee Harris, if they're going to lose games like this, I think they need to save and put on the shelf. Now, we talk about these quarterbacks. You're talking about Justin Fields. Najee Harris, man, they do not let him rest. And in my opinion, if you feel that you're not going anywhere this season, I mean, bro, you have to get him some rest. And because running backs only have a certain shelf life, and they can only take so many hits. And I don't want them to burn this guy out just running him around out there every play where he's not coming off the field at all or he's taking a chance of getting injured. That, in my opinion, I think that's something that's flown under the radar. They need to protect Najee Harris, in my opinion. And you need to get him off the field from time to time because I do not want this guy to burn out, man, because I think he can be a tremendous running back. If you want to get an offensive line around him, then at least you put him on the bench from time to time and let him rest. But I think they're going to run him into the ground and wear him into the ground. And I think that's one person who they need to be cognizant of about not giving as many reps to if they're not going to be a playoff contender.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. They came right out of the gate and they beat probably the best team in the league right now in the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. And that kind of surprised everybody. Did the Buffalo play their best game? No. But that defense, the Steelers defense played really well in that game, and Big Ben threw some big touchdown passes to help them win that game. Mm-hmm. To me, I don't see enough diversity in this Matt Canada offense. They're not doing things that are scaring people. They're not trying to stretch the field like they used to. Even going back to last year, like
even when they do, he's missing.
You were still getting Deontay Johnson getting down the field. And I mean, I watched some of that game the other day, Greg. Guys like Juju Smith-Schuster still dropping passes. Big third downs. He's not getting.
Yeah, it's not all on Big Ben.
It's not all on Ben. He's not getting a lot of help. But to me, this Matt Canada needs to he needs to figure out a way to change this offense up because they're not scaring anybody and they're not fooling anybody. And I understand what you say about Najee Harris, but I don't feel like this is a team that's ready to give up just yet.
No, again, it's 4 games in, so we'll see. And maybe Big Ben, he changes that narrative. Now, harkening back real quick before we say just a couple of quick things about the Texans and Cowboys. They got like 2 or 3 minutes. But Tom Brady, there are some throws that Antonio Brown, some catches that he could have made. Tom Brady's stats would have looked a lot better than they did close. As well, even in that rainstorm. So people forget that. It was some passes that was missed.
Tough catch to make in the rain. If it's dry, he probably makes that catch.
Mike Evans, yeah. I mean, the rain, and that's why I say the rain was raining so bad. I mean, I don't want to put too much stock into that game one way or another as far as Tom Brady is concerned in Tampa Bay. Of course, they need to get healthy on the other side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball. But real quick, a minute or two. The reason I really wasn't pressed about talking about my Cowboys today like that, because
before you get into it, I got some breaking news on the Cowboys front.
Okay.
Breaking news, just coming down about 12 minutes ago, the Cowboys have released Jalen Smith.
What?
Released Jalen Smith.
I noticed he wasn't
no longer
on the
a Cowboy. They were trying to make a trade. There was some talks in the works, but they all fell through, and now Jalen Smith will go through waivers and become a free agent. Nobody's going to pick up his contract, otherwise they would have traded for him.
I know, and I noticed this past Sunday.
It saves the Cowboys $9.5 million underneath the cap. So I mean, there's that. You've got Micah Parsons that's playing really well.
Absolutely.
And
Zeke, what I tell you about Zeke?
Zeke looked good.
143.
Zeke looks really good. Looks like the Zeke of old. And
your boy at Kansas City.
And
looking good. Ran for over 100.
Edward Hilaire played well. Yeah. And that's, I saw that too, and I was thinking Greg's going to get on me for.
I started to bring it up earlier. I left both of those alone.
Whenever you go and play the Kansas City Chiefs, Edward Hilaire is about
always do that.
Edward Hilaire is about 27th on the list of people you got to stop when you go to play the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right, you keep thinking that. Okay.
I really feel that way, but let him string
14 carries for over 114
Let him
yards,
string a few of those together and let him prove me wrong. Hey, we just talked about Kyler Murray, who was a guy who I thought had all the talent in the world, but I thought he was going to struggle at the NFL level, and he hasn't done so even yet his entire career. I'm not right about everything.
No. I mean, and neither am I.
Absolutely. But Jalen Smith, it's sad to see a career where a guy who came in injured or who had some injury concerns with the leg and the nerve ending all the way down to the bottom of the leg, never missed a game. Played an entire game. He was always available for every game. But I think the Cowboys are eyeing maybe some other moves. They need to clear up some cap space. And so Jalen had a meeting with Jerry Jones today, and he was let go.
Hey, okay. Well, hey, thanks for that breaking news. And again, like we're just saying right now, we're not always right about things, but we're first to admit when we're wrong as well. That's why we don't mind bringing up when we're right a lot of times, because we'll bring up when we're wrong when we're wrong as well. But I thought about that early in the show, and I was going to bring up Clyde Edwards-Helaire in Kansas City, and and Zeke and what he's doing. And hey, but I'll say this: the Cowboys. It's not too much to say other than the fact I hope they keep it going on both sides of the ball. They're playing at a tremendous level right now. And they seem like the class. They are definitely the class of the NFC East. I love what Dak is doing. He's playing at the MVP level. The offensive line is beasting right now. That's where the credit goes right there, in my opinion, to that offensive line. And I just love what they're doing right now on both sides of the ball. Now, as far as the Texans, real quick, I mean, the only way the Texans are going to get better on offense is put it like this. The passing game is not going to get better if the running game continues to be bad. The running game is not going to get better if the passing game continues to get bad. The passing game went for 87 yards last week, 4 interceptions by Davis Mills. Of course, it was raining as well in Buffalo. They played Buffalo. Buffalo, a lot of people feel like can go to the Super Bowl this season, and they're playing like the Buffalo Bills we expect them to be right now. They're playing like that. And 48 yards rushing and 87 yards passing in that game.
Yeah, that was
40-0 loss.
By far, that was the worst game that I've ever seen the Texans play ever. And I've seen some bad ones. They couldn't do anything with the football on the offensive level, and it was painful to really watch Mills go out there and struggle time and time again. And it kind of confuses me coming off a week where David Culley said, "Man, we're gonna put everything up on his plate, and he's gonna go out there and play." But a Bills defense dialed in on a rookie quarterback. A guy like Sean McDermott, he's been fooling quarterbacks, with defensive schemes. Him and Leslie Frazier for years. Whether together or apart, or separate. Them two together, they're very, very strong defensive brain trust there. And those guys, they knew exactly how to tackle Davis Mills in that Texans offense, because there's one thing that this Texans offense, even led by Tim Kelly, who's an offensive coordinator who is highly regarded in some circles around the league. He has done some things. The offense looked good in the first couple games.
Yeah, they did.
Playing with Tyrod Taylor. The problem is this offense, this version of Bill O'Brien's offense, which I hate to call it that because it's a lot better than Bill's offense. It didn't look like that. The scheme and what the things Kelly is willing and able to do is a lot better than what Bill O'Brien would do. The way he calls plays is a lot better than Bill O'Brien. This offense has always benefited from having a mobile quarterback, having a quarterback who was a threat to run. That threat to run opened up other things in the running game. Were they world beaters in the running game? No. But when you don't have a quarterback, or when the quarterback, or this offense doesn't have a quarterback who has a threat to run the football, they're really not that good at run blocking. They're really not that good at opening up holes for runners. And they don't have anybody with any real explosiveness that you say, okay, well, if we can just get this guy one crease, we don't have to be world beaters. We get this guy one crease, he can make some big plays. Like what a guy like Tony Pollard would do. They have older guys, Philip Lindsay, yeah, he's got a burst, but to me, his timing is all off. I mean, he's hitting the turbo button as soon as he gets the football. And if you ever played Madden,
he doesn't read his
you can't hit the turbo button as soon as you get the football. Otherwise, you're going to get tackled in the backfield. Or you're going to run into somebody. You got to wait until daylight presents itself and then hit it. Right. And so they've been pitiful at offense. But I will say this, when I look at the other side of the ball, this is the Buffalo Bills offense putting up damn near 40 points a game. I think now it is probably 40 points a game, aside from their first little egg they laid against Pittsburgh. What I say about KC,
they're going to score 40 a game. They're off to a 1-0 start at 40 a game. Go ahead.
I'll say this about the defense. They were up to a real big challenge against that Buffalo offense, and the offense didn't put them any favors. They lost the position battle that entire game.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many drives Davis Mills started with his back right up against the end zone, but it had to have been 6 or 7, maybe even 8 drives inside the 10-yard line. That's incredible. And then on top of that, for the defense, in the first half alone, due to a muff punt and a horrible offense, I think Buffalo started their drive in Texans territory, just right outside of Texans territory, or at the 50-yard line, I think 6 times in the first half. And the Texans held them to 16 points with an offense that couldn't do anything. They were knocking the ball out left and right. They had their hands on several more interceptions than they actually got. They got an interception from Lonnie Johnson. They had one that could have occurred in the end zone by Christian Kirksey, hit right off his hands, which would have taken points off the board. It would have been 13-0 going into halftime, because there's no way the Texans would have gone down and scored with the football, but they would have kept that last field goal off of the board. I was inspired by what the defense was able to do. You could just tell by the time they went to halftime, they knew it. They're like, we could play our best game and
still won't have a chance.
You can't win when you score 0.
I know.
But that defense
and the weather didn't help.
What Lovie Smith has been able to do with that defense, that leaves me optimistic about things going forward, because I definitely saw a defense that so far through 4 games has been able to compete with some of the best talent around the league. Some of the best offenses around the league.
Well, that's why.
Take Jacksonville out of it, but Cleveland, and who am I forgetting now? Carolina, and then now just this past Sunday against Buffalo. You look at that first half. Whenever you put a team like Buffalo on the 50-yard line 6 times in a row, you probably expect them to come away with at least 5 or 6 touchdowns. The fact that they only came away with 16 points, that tells me that's a gritty defense. And that defense is dealing with injuries too. They've got injuries up and down that roster. So promise on the defense, on the offense, not so much. And to me, it's just Davis Mills.
Well, maybe when Tyrod Taylor comes back, if he comes back in a timely
back, and if they play him, if they decide to not stick with Mills, I know there's a lot of talk that maybe the team will just stick with Mills so that they lose and get a better draft pick.
I got you.
But to me, the way Tyrod played, and I was listening to 610 earlier. They got in an argument with a guy over this. I don't think there's any way you keep Tyrod. I don't think there's any way you keep Tyrod.
Too much Texans talk for me. That's all they talk about.
They're the flagship. That's what flagships do. There's just the way Tyrod played in the first 2 games. I mean, you just can't keep that guy off the field. I'd put him back out there. I don't care if he wins. He wins. I want to know if I'm the owner, or if I'm Nick Caserio, I want to know what the offense really is right now.
Yeah.
And I want to know if I'm going to draft a quarterback for a Tim Kelly-led offense, do I need to draft a guy like Mac Jones, or do I need to draft a guy like Tyrod Taylor?
Mobile, yeah.
I need to see it right now, because I've seen what they do with a guy. Now, don't do me wrong. Nobody's confusing David Mills for Mac Jones.
I got you.
But, I mean, he still was a guy who some people thought was higher rated than where he went in the 3rd round. Some people thought he was a late second. Some people thought he could even sneak up in the 1st if there wasn't such a plethora of quarterbacks available.
Right.
If it was one of them weak years, we might have seen him go in the 1st round.
Never know.
So, I mean, if I'm Nick Caserio, I'm thinking, man, if Tyrod Taylor's doing this with Tim Kelly and Davis Mills is doing this, granted he's a rookie, and when I'm evaluating quarterbacks, I'm going to evaluate and look for a guy that's more like Tyrod than I am Davis Mills. So to me, I put Tyrod out there, and I figure out where this team is really at right now, because we could backtrack all day, but you go back, you find a way, Tyrod Taylor stays in that game, and you beat Cleveland, and I don't think there's anybody who will tell you that if the Texans play the way they played against Cleveland and they have Tyrod against Carolina, they probably beat Carolina. I mean, they held Carolina in check for most of that game. I mean, under 20 points until the very end.
Right.
So I could easily see when you look at what you got, you don't really know what you have as a whole until you play your best guys. I think the worst thing the Texans can do is just tank this season and then try to figure out, if they're going to draft this guy, the other guy. No. You play the best guys you got. You figure out what your best roster is. That way, moving forward, because let's face it, we talked about it earlier. There's no guarantee that there's a quarterback that's going to be worth taking in the first round this year.
I can't even tell you one right now that comes to mind.
Don't you want to know if Tyrod's going to be good enough to maybe make a run next year with the defense that's one more year into Lovey's system and getting more and more comfortable and developing a little better? The young Lonnie Johnson finally coming into his own.
Well, that's why
Justin Reed getting better.
Yeah, let me interject real quick. Well, that's why I said, to your points about your optimism about the Texans, that's why I said all during preseason and actually after the first week or so, up until Tyrod Taylor got hurt, that's why I said I like what I'm seeing from the Texans as far as the way they've competed and things of that sort. I mean, I hope this past Sunday was an aberration. I mean, I really do, but because I've seen nothing but positives as far as the Texans. Now, granted, it hasn't showed up as far as wins and losses, but as far as the culture and as far as them being competitive, as far as Lovie Smith having them playing good on defense. And so I'm hoping that the way that game ended up was an aberration because, for one, the weather was terrible, and then they just ran into a buzzsaw in Buffalo.
And their strengths in Buffalo really match up well if you're Buffalo and not so much if you're Houston with their weaknesses. I mean, they've got a deep defensive line.
Absolutely.
And the Texans don't have that on the offensive line, and they have an offensive line that is so. They've got a deep defensive line where they can send fresh legs at you, the entire game pretty much. And every one of those guys, you could take their backup defensive line and probably go throw them on another team somewhere, put them on the Lions. They'd probably all start. You know what I mean? That's how deep and good this defensive line is. And they were no match. I mean, the Texans' offensive line was no match for them.
You're right. Hey, that's the show for today. What was that, like over 2 hours, commercial free?
Yep.
That's how we do. Hey, let's get out of here. So the Red Sox are up right now, Eddie, 3-0. Over the world-famous New York Yankees.
World famous.
So we'll see what happens with the remainder of that game. And, of course, the Astros this upcoming Thursday. We'll be back next Tuesday. Eddie, great job by you. Hey, we'll see you guys next Tuesday. The Sports Court. Legends live and let live.
Later.